Hey everyone, Data here, and welcome to my first ever ultimate guide to everything on Hockey Legacy Manager 25. If you're not already aware, Hockey Legacy Manager, or HLM, is an offline hockey management game which is in the family of franchise mode type games and is available to play on Android, iOS, or Steam. In HLM, as is boasted by the game's website, you'll be able to manage your own team, draft players, make trades, and lead your team to victory in the most realistic hockey manager game out there. Season simulation is fast and can be completed in under 2 minutes, players and teams are fully customizable, and no internet connection is required for this game, which checks a ton of boxes for franchise mode fans such as myself. As you would know if you've watched my channel before, I'm a huge fan of franchise mode across many different games, but my first love is and has always been the EA NHL series. Now, at time of recording, the state of franchise mode in NHL 25 hasn't been great, and while I'm not saying I'm done with the EA NHL series, because I'm not, it has made me think more and more about alternatives, and I believe that the best one out there for us franchise mode fans is Hockey Legacy Manager. There are other good options like Franchise Hockey Manager or East Side Hockey Manager, but in my opinion, when it comes to both the experience and the cost, HLM is the way to go. I honestly can't speak too much for Franchise Hockey Manager or for East Side Hockey Manager, but from what I know through doing my research and reading some of the reviews that you're seeing on the screen right here, you could pause and check those out, and through playing Hockey Legacy Manager itself, getting what I feel is the better game for $9.99 Canadian on Steam, when FHM 11 Franchise Hockey Manager is $57.99 and East Side Hockey Manager is $21.99, it's an obvious choice for me. Also note that buying HLM on Steam automatically gives you access to Pro modes, so the price could be a little different depending on where you're buying. I'll talk about that later, but if you are playing on Android or iOS, you could download the base version of the game for free, and then later decide whether or not you want to upgrade to the Pro version for a reduced $5.99 Canadian. So all that being said, I finally decided to give HLM a chance myself a couple of months ago, and I was completely overwhelmed in the best possible way by all of the different things that you can do in the game. So like how I've done for NHL or MLB The Show games, I decided to put out a guide for all of you so that you too can learn more about HLM. I may not have 15 plus years of learning little tips and tricks like I do in the EA NHL series, so I wouldn't call myself an expert just yet, but I think that this HLM guide will be very helpful for anyone who wants to try it out or at least think about giving it a shot. And for those of you who are more experienced with HLM, please do leave a comment with any of the tips or tricks that you think that I missed in this video, and that will make any future guide that I do even better. And finally, before I go on, another reason for why this video is so exciting is that it is my first ever sponsored video. What I mean by that is that I personally reached out to the team at HLM and I suggested that we work together in a partnership that felt like it would be a perfect match, and the team at HLM agreed. Let me also clarify that while this is a sponsored video, 0% of any payment that I receive from this video comes in relation to anything to do with people downloading or purchasing the game. What I'm here to do is to present the facts and explain to you the reasons why I like the game, while still delivering an impartial analysis of the game, just like I do with the EA NHL series. So while I do indeed love the game and want to tell you about it because I think you'll enjoy it, as if you're someone who likes playing franchise mode, nothing in this video is meant to make you feel as though I'm just reading off of a script and I really just want you to buy the game and that's it. I don't actually believe in what I'm saying. I think that the game is worth the free download and even the Pro version purchase, but that will be for you to decide. And if you're skeptical about even watching any further in this guide video, let me first just direct your attention to the current ratings of NHL 25 compared to the current ratings of HLM 25. On top of HLM being a great game, I think this rating also comes from how helpful and responsive the dev team is for any questions or issues related to bugs that you may send them through their email or even on their subreddit. Again, a breath of fresh air from what we are used to getting in the EA NHL world. So at the very least, stick around to find out about all the awesome features in HLM that we hope EA NHL will also someday just include a fraction of. So because there are so many great features to cover, this video is quite lengthy. Please don't be put off by that. You can go ahead and use the timestamps to go between different things you might be interested in learning more about, or you could just watch it all at whatever ×2 speed. It's up to you. It was a lot of research and behind the scenes work, so special thank you to Jack and Browskego in our Discord server who was helping me out with a lot of the stuff that I wasn't as sure on. And with that being said, let's get started. Leaving a like would be very much appreciated, and of course, subscribe if you haven't already for all of our ongoing videos here on the channel for franchise mode content, career simulations, and much, much more. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this guide started, and it all starts at the main screen of Hockey Legacy Manager. I'll be playing on the iOS version on my MacBook. As I mentioned previously, if you're downloading on iOS or Android, it's the free version of the game that you're getting, and then you can upgrade to Pro for $5.99 from there. If you're purchasing it straight away from Steam for $9.99, then it already comes as the Pro version. The free version has some limitations, not as much customization. You can't go into history mode. You also can't play beyond 7 years. So if you want 8 years or more, the Pro version is the way to go. If it was like a super cheap version for free and it costs $60 to upgrade, I'd say, well, who are we kidding here? But for a very good version for free and a much better version for just $6 to $10 Canadian, it's absolutely worth it in my mind, especially as someone who's going to be paying, $120 for NHL 26 when it comes out next year. So from the main screen here, you can see that you can click New Career, which will start your career at the beginning of the 2024-25 season. If you're in Pro mode, which I'll get in just a moment because probably about 90% of this video will be in Pro mode, you could go to History mode to start off if you're in the Pro mode, if you've purchased Pro mode, I should say. You can start in 1917, 42, 60, 80, or 2000, 2010, 21, 22, or 23. So that's nice about the History mode. You can just go a little bit in the past, or you can go way back into historic league or player settings. So as I'll be saying many times in this video, something that EA NHL does not offer, but it is offered in, say, like NBA 2K. But so history mode, great thing you can do if you have the Pro version. And before you start, whether it be new career or history mode, you'll want to go into your settings and just check some of the things that you can do before the creation of your HLM save file. I always want to say franchise mode, but it's gonna be your save file. So how often are you auto saving? Is it every month? Is it disabled every 2 month, 3 month, 4 month? That's up to you. Dark theme on or off? I'm probably more of a light theme guy, but I don't want to hurt anybody's eyeballs, so I'll keep the dark theme turned on. Back to settings, back to general. So if I have the Pro system, the Pro version of the game, I should say, I can make the point system different. So the default would be 2 points for a win, 1 point for an overtime loss, and no points for a loss. There are no shootouts in HLM. It's either an overtime win or loss. If it goes beyond regulation, the game will always end in overtime. There are no shootouts. So 2 points for a win, 1 for overtime loss only, or 0 for a loss. Then the other option would be 3-2-1-0, which would be 3 points for a win, 2 points for an overtime win, 1 point for an overtime loss, 0 points for a regulation loss. Imperial system, do I want imperial or metric? That's up to me. Pro version, salary cap on or off. Static salary cap on or off. Regular version, waivers, auto waivers, take care of that. Preseason waivers being turned on or off could be also in Pro version. Auto preseason lineup, hide the player's potential. This is essentially like a Fog of War type thing. So Fog of War, if you want to think of it like that, would be a Pro version. So you can hide the potential, hide the player's ratings, or even you could have their detailed ratings turned on or off. So you can really make it more difficult for yourself. Play-by-play default speed. So if you're going into a slow sim, do you want the default speed of the slow sim to be 1, 2, 4 times, or even less, half, a quarter, 0.15 times when you're going in to watch a slow sim of a game. Rivalries turned on or off. It's always turned on. If you want it turned off, that is in the Pro version, which just means if you're taking over a team that has a rival, like let's say the Canadiens and the Bruins, it will be harder for the Canadiens, for example, to acquire a player from Boston without overpaying a little bit because they are rival teams. Furthermore, rivalries can be developed as your franchise series goes on. If for whatever reason you're the Minnesota Wild and you keep on facing the Anaheim Ducks year after year after year after year in the playoffs, a rivalry will develop. You can turn that off in the Pro version, but just by itself in the free version, it is already turned on for you, which I think is an awesome touch. So as you can tell right here, yes, there are some things that are turned off, but in my opinion, that's the customizability of it all. If you really want customization, then absolutely go Pro mode. But just because you're playing free mode doesn't mean that now it's like the boring base version. There's still a ton of things that are cool about this. And to finish off the general settings, now getting down to the sliders, these are only adjustable if you have Pro mode. So I decided to pause here and go get myself Pro mode, and now with it I can talk to you about them a little bit more. All of the sliders are on 5, going from 1 on 5 to 5 on 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on 5 from low to high. Also, another setting that was here but is no longer here because I have Pro mode was the unlimited seasons setting. In the base mode, it's automatically turned off and your max is 7 years, as I'd mentioned before. After that, if you want to keep playing into year 8 and up, you'd have to get the Pro mode. But in Pro mode, it's already automatically turned on. You you can play for whatever, 2, 3, 4, 500 years, no problem. Now back to the sliders. When it comes to scoring and shot frequency, I wouldn't say that I've played enough to really know the small nuances between 2-on-5 and 4-on-5, but in my experience, plus the experiences of those who I've spoken to, especially Jack and Nebrowskiego, who've been super helpful in our Discord server, who've been walking me through the entirety of HLM, 3-on-5 for scoring and shot frequency works just fine. Salary cap increase as well, if you just want to keep it pretty much just going with inflation of what would be probably expected of the world. It's either low, medium, or high on this one. There's only 3 settings. Medium would be okay as well. Now, family member success probability, this is a fun one, but really it only matters in pro mode because I'm not going to be able to see the children of the current NHL players make the NHL unless I'm playing until the 2030s, 2040s, 2050s. So if I do play that far, I already have pro mode, and if I have pro mode, I can already download rosters that have player children included. For example, Alexander Ovechkin's 2 sons, Sergei and Ilya. Will they make the NHL? Will they even care about making the NHL? Of course, who knows, but it's fun to have the storylines intertwined and just random players like we've seen in our Discord server, like, whoa, Thomas Harley's son becomes the #1 ranked player of the 2043 draft class, stuff like that. Really fun to add for the storyline. So I wouldn't say I have to throw it all the way to high, but I'd probably put it maybe closer to here to add some more fun to it. But wherever you put it, it will be included. It's not like an on or off switch, just what's the higher frequency and what's the higher probability levels. That's what we're talking about. And finally, playoff parity. Again, this is a 1, 2, or 3 slider. If it's set to low, basically the best teams will be the best teams. And if it's set to normal, there will be the open door for some upsets for players. There are teams that are good that fall apart in the playoffs, which make more sense. I don't think it's quite like EA where teams just forget how to play hockey and get swept in round 1 like 45% of the time. But normal will be probably what it should be in relation to the real world NHL, while low is just going to be a lot easier to win if you have a strong team, which might be what you want to do, and that's fine. So it's either low, medium, or normal for those 3 settings. For manager name, you can change that there. Time played, you can check that out, and there you have it. So with pro mode on, now the settings look like this without things being blanked out for what's pro, what's not. As we keep on going, I'll tell you what things are pro. So that's the general settings. Those are the general settings. Now moving on to data. These settings are identical for both base and pro players. Retired players, decide how long you want to keep retired player data. So once a player is retired, how long will you have his data available to be viewed? Could be 5, 10, 20, 40 years, or infinite. Now, keep in mind, of course, you might be thinking, well, why not keep it infinite? You never know when I might want to see it if I'm playing for 50 plus years. The more data you have on the more players and the more teams and the more stuff building up over the years, the slower the simulation will be. I don't think it's going to be crazy where it's 2 minutes to sim a year 1 and then it's going to be 15 minutes to sim a year 55, but it will be, I think, noticeable the more you have after you go for decades and decades. Again, if you're playing the base version, it doesn't really matter because you can't go beyond 7 years anyways, but I would say I'd probably try for infinite and then see will I even get to 40 plus years anyways. That's just my preference. That's for the retired player data. Lineup history, decide how long you want to keep the alignment history data that you have. So that could be don't keep or between 5 and 40 years, or you go infinite. And finally, inbox history, because you get mail from your GMs, from league news, stuff like that. Decide how long you want to keep your inbox history, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or infinite. This is like you get a lot of information over the course of a year, so I probably wouldn't want to keep this for more than 5 years. The other two I could see infinite, but infinite inbox, probably not. All right. Now, going on to roster. In these settings, the only thing you can change if you are playing on the base version is generated names. Randomize every player name. That's the only thing you could turn on or off. Every other setting here for roster requires you to have the pro version. What does that mean? Just the name of the game, customizability. Can I edit players? Can I use created players? In-game roster editor. So while I'm already in the save file, can I go and change someone's attributes, whether they be increasing or decreasing? Generate created player faces. Retired players becoming staff members. Now, just because it's not adjustable doesn't mean that it's not turned on. Remember that. It's already there for the base version. It's already turned on. These are all the default settings. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. These are the default settings. So even the base players get retired stats, roster stats, retired players as staff. But if I have the pro version, then it's adjustable. I can turn it off. And the things that are off can be turned on. So there's a slight difference. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. Ignore retired jerseys, roster stats, retired stats, relative ratings. So change the ratings to be relative to the best player in the league. So the best player is McDavid and he's whatever, 98 overall. And suddenly poof, he disappears. Now that the next up is maybe a 95 overall, let's say, will everyone else's overall in the league then come down to match that relatively? That's up to you, but I keep that off in my opinion. And how many years of draft picks are available when it comes to what I can trade as a team? So if in year 1, I can trade 2025, 2026, 2027, and 2028 draft picks. If I set it to more or less, I can go into 2029, 30, 31, 32. I believe about 4 years makes sense to me. I don't think teams usually trade really further than that. So there you go. That's for the roster settings. Now, inbox and notifications. All of these are adjustable for base and pro version, and it just comes down to what you want to be receiving in your inbox over the course of a season. So hide mail notification badges, general notifications, draft day, retirement day, just, hey, there's this big thing coming up. I'd say keep that one on. Contract negotiations, receive notification when a player responds to your contract proposal. You'll want that. Trade alerts, yeah, I'd say you want that. And champion notifications at the end of the season, who won the NHL, the AHL, the ECHL, all the leagues that you have activated, and that we'll talk about in a little bit as well. Those are the main ones that I'd say keep. Now, user waiver notifications, be notified when one of your players is claimed, be notified when another team puts a player on waivers. Now, you can turn that on, but adjust it to say, only let me know if they're 80 overall or higher, 83 overall or higher. Let me know about everybody even. That's going to be up to you. Waiver minimum potential as well. Only let me know if they're at least a top 6 player, top 4D, medium start, or whatever it might be. Only let me know if they're in that range. And only if they're matching my needs, maybe. I can set my needs in my trade block, and only let me know that players on waivers are there if they're matching the needs that I set. And finally, only positive value. So players with negative value, very low overall with a very big contract, those players have negative trade value. If they're put on waivers, I don't want to even be notified about them. That's up to you to turn those on or off. Personally, I want to know about everything, so I'd pretty much turn all notifications on and let me know about every player who's being placed everywhere. Do you want to be notified when a player suffers a minor injury, moderate injury, major injury, and then it's just notify, or no, ignore and replace. Not ignore and now things are falling apart. Ignore and replace. The assistant coach, whoever else, your staff will take care of it. Do I want it for the major leagues, the minor leagues, the QMJHL, the OHL, the WHL? And again, if you have the custom rosters, major will be NHL, minor will be AHL. Because the game doesn't have the rights to say NHL, AHL, all that, you have to kind of infer what it means. QJL, QMJHL. You got to infer a little bit. Okay, now on to trade settings. What is adjustable here for the base version is confirm trades. When you press offer trade, you want to have to press one more button to ask, do you really want to offer this? I'd always keep that on just for safety purposes. Auto trade block, you want the game to automatically generate your trade block. And trade deadline duration, there's a little trade deadline mini game. How long do you want it to last? I'd say 10 minutes is about your max. I could see some people wanting 30 minutes, but for me, going to the deadline, I probably already know what I want, and it's not going to take me 10 minutes to make that trade. Depends on what you're going into the trade deadline with, whether or not you did research already, I suppose. Now, the other settings, which are only adjustable if you have the pro version, auto trade, let the AI accept trades for you. So you just want to purely sim and then just see what happens. You don't want to have to deal with any of that. Let the AI take care of it for you. Auto AI trade, activate trades between teams managed by the AI. So essentially just letting AI controlled teams trade with each other. Force trade, this is a great one. Force the AI to accept a trade offer, forcing a trade to go through. If I turn this on, it doesn't mean every trade that I send will be accepted, but it means that if a trade gets declined, the game will ask me, hey, do you want to force this trade through anyways? That's great for if you want to do some roster editing. If you're already in a save file and a trade happens in the real world and you want that to reflect in your save file, for example, you could force a trade, acquire that player, then trade that player. It takes a little bit of mixing and matching, but that's a good way to use force trade. Or just, hey, a trade makes a ton of sense for all the storyline purposes that you have, but for some reason the AI just doesn't want to accept it, force that trade through. You are in control. Great setting to have. Hide value is also like a fog of war type thing where you don't know the value of the players or the pieces that you're acquiring. You don't know exactly what that other team values them at. So maybe you're underpaying or overpaying in a certain offer, and that's what you'd have to judge. And finally, trade difficulty. Again, keeping it in the middle is probably the way to go here on the on-5 scale. I find that 1-on-5 is probably too easy, and 5-on-5 is like really, really hard. It's not like EA NHL where hard can still be cheesed. Yes, it can still be, you can always cheese the AI, but hard here is way harder than EA NHL's hard, quote hard. So I'd say 3-on-5 is fine for trade difficulty. And you can always change that later on if you're finding that it's too easy or too hard, whatever else. All right, now on to contracts. Again, most of this is adjustable for the base version as well. For the pro version though, there's a couple things here. Force sign is one of them. You can force a player to accept your contract offer no matter what you're offering them. I believe this is different than the forced trade though, because in forced trade, a team could decline and then you could force it after. But in force sign, a player will never decline. It will always be accepted the first time. It's not that they'll decline and then you'll force it. They'll always accept it the first time. And the other pro setting here, a couple of sliders here at the bottom, salary demands and salary influence can both be adjusted if you have the pro version. These sliders, salary demands go from low to high on a 3-point scale. The 3 points I usually always keep in the middle anyways. And for salary influence, how are they getting to the number that they're asking for when it comes to their contract demands? Is it more based on their overall or more based on their production? So if they're an 82 overall who scores 100 points, they're going to be asking for a lot. And the flip side of that is if you have a 95 overall who scored 20 points, he'll still be wanting 95 overall money. So I tend to lean more towards the production side of things, probably 4-on-5 with the slight lean towards production. Those are the pro version type things. Now for everybody else, auto-sign players, auto-sign free agents, letting the AI take care of everything. Update your lineup on contract signing. So it's not like EA NHL where, magically it's the off season, so you're not allowed to look at your lines anymore. Another thing that makes my brain melt. So yes, you actually see your lineup getting updated as contracts are being signed in the off season. Maximum contract limit as well. Add or remove the maximum contract limit allowed per team. Contract clauses. Do I want them to be involved or not? This is adjustable for the base version. So like I was saying earlier, there's still a ton you can do on the base version. Really, it comes down to getting the real team names, the real player names, and the customization of the deeper things that make me want to get the pro version. But still, the base version is a blast. And generated free agents too. Let the game occasionally generate quality players in free agency. Maybe there's that NCAA guy who didn't ever get drafted. Now he's a free agent. I don't know. It's not like turning it on will have McDavid's pop up in free agency, but I'd probably keep that off just in my own playtime. And then free agency event on July 1st. The free agency event will allow you to go into kind of like a mini game where the players are making, the biggest fish, especially in free agency, are making their decisions more quickly, where other teams will be sending offers and you can't really wait 3 weeks to hope that they're still going to be available. This is more reflective of the real world where those big fish are signing those big contracts pretty early on. How long should that duration be? I did 5 minutes. I found that it went a little bit quickly, so I'd probably even lean 7.5 minutes here. Depends on what you know going into the free agency event. If you go into it totally blind, put 7.5. If you go into it knowing exactly who you're offering and exactly how much, and you know your game plan, well, you may as well put it 2.5. There's nothing that you have to waste your time for. So that's for contracts, free agency, all that good stuff. Now, on to your staff. Being able to turn the staff salary cap on or off is a pro version thing, as well as the two sliders right here. Staff experience gain rate is going to be at a low rate or a high rate that your staff gains experience, and the salary demands of your staff, will they be low or will they be high? That's a 3-point slider as opposed to the 5-point slider. And then for everybody, you're able to adjust staff specialties, which is kind of like staff X factors. We'll talk about those later on, and auto staff specialties. Let the AI manage your staff specialties. You don't need to worry about managing whatever the specialty of that head coach or head physio might be. You let the AI take care of that. That's the staff quickly. Development now. These first 3 are for everybody. These last 4 are only for pro. So for everybody, training enabled. You can turn that on or off. Decide if you want to play with player training, to be able to change their position, to be able to train them in certain attributes. I'd say keep that on because you can even just set it to AI doing it automatically. Even if you don't want to take the time to do it, you can have the AI take care of it, because right here, auto training focus, let your staff assign the players training focus, and auto training, let your staff assign the players training itself. So I'd say turn all 3 of these on if you don't really care about it, and if you do care about it, then just keep training enabled. Now for these last 4 settings, pro version only for adjustability. Prospect development between low and high on the 5-point scale. Again, medium works pretty well here, and for the monthly progression rate, it could be low to high on the 5-point scale once more. As I've been saying for most of these sliders, I couldn't really tell you the big difference between 2-on-5 or 4-on-5. The default's 3-on-5. I find it works well. I can't say that I've done a ton of experimentation with just little things like that. And finally, the regression age between 28 and 40 on a 12-point notch here. So 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, all the way to 40, the age that players start to regress. Do you want them to start regressing at 28 or only start at 40? I'd probably be somewhere like, I don't know, 32, 33, something like that. So if I was looking at 32, I'd be here on my slider. Depends how physiological you want to get with it. And finally, balanced prospect generation. When active, the simulation will try to keep the same amount of players per rating each year. This has an impact on the progression of young players who have not reached their potential. So if a lot of high overall players retire, the sim will have to compensate for that, which will obviously directly impact the progression of a player. So that's automatically turned on in the base version. In the pro version, you could turn it off. And personally, I'd probably turn it off. Just let whatever the overalls and development is going to be, let that be. Not necessarily getting a special sprinkling of magic dust just because other players are no longer here or whatever else it might be. For injuries, pretty simple. They're either turned on or off, and this is a pro version thing. All three of these settings are only pro version. You turn them on or off. The frequency is between low and high on the 5-point scale. I find that 2 on 5 works okay for me. Again, it comes down to, I'm seeing it's too much, I'm seeing it's not enough, you change it later, but I think the default works okay. And career-ending injuries, now this is one where I do make a little bit of a change. It's not like a 3 on 5 will have career-ending injuries happen all the time, but how often in the real NHL do actual career-ending injuries happen? Already 1 on 5, sorry, it's a 3-point scale. Already 1 on 3, I think is low enough. I wouldn't want to have it at 2 on 3 or 3 on 3. This should, unless you want it for the storyline, go for it. But I'm saying, even if you're trying to hold in line with real realism, how often is there a career-ending injury? I'd say it's on the lower range. Next, moving on to tournaments. These are adjustable by everybody. You got the World Cup and the World Juniors. The World Cup happening every 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, every year, or disabled. And then for the World Juniors, is it every, again, year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or disabled. So if you want to keep it reflective of the real world, it would be the default settings every 4 years for the World Cup, every year for the World Juniors. World Cup happens, I believe, somewhere in August, so it's before the preseason. And the World Juniors always like end of December, start of January, so it's like in the real world. And do you want team control? Do you want to have team control of any of these guys in the World Cup, in Latvia, or whether it be Austria, Italy? Do you want to take control of any of those teams in the World Cup? You can change that later on, or you can decide right away at the beginning. If you have pro version, you'll also see this setting, which is your roster account. So put your email, your username, all that if you want to be able to share rosters and whatever else. Now we're almost done here in the settings. I know it takes a lot of time to get through all the nitty gritty. Onto the draft. Everything here is adjustable only for the pro version, except for prevent undrafted players from re-entering future drafts, yes or no. If a player goes undrafted, I don't mind if they re-enter a future draft, so I keep that off. So starting from the top, position distribution. This is also only for pro version. I don't mind keeping this all just down the middle here from the, this is on a 10-point scale between -50 to 0 to +50. I wouldn't mind just keeping it at 0 baseline for everybody, for every position. Unless you really think that drafts more often than not have less goalies and more right wings, I don't know, that's up to you. But I would just keep it all at default in my opinion. How many rounds of the draft? Between 1 and 7. The max being 7, of course, that's the max in the real world. Original draft picks, that gives every team back their draft picks. Everyone will have their round 1 to 7 selections, as opposed to reflecting the real world wherein teams have traded their draft picks. So I keep that off. Prevent, we already talked about that. Draft speed now. If you go to fast, this is a 5-point scale. If you go to fast, it will literally be bang, 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 like that fast. So I don't need to be able to see every single pick in the 150s. So I wouldn't want to go super slow. But again, it comes down to what is your game plan? Are you really thinking through things? Do you already know that you're just trying to sim towards your pick? I'd probably just keep it default. And it's actually, my apologies, a 4-point scale. I'll probably keep that default. Extra rounds. How many additional rounds of players will be generated each year? Between 1 and 5. This just means that in a 7-round draft, 10 rounds of players will be generated. So that means some players go undrafted, they carry over to the next year. It won't be exactly, okay, we're drafting 220 prospects, so there's 220 available. No, there's 7 rounds of picks, 10 rounds of available prospects. So I guess that would mean close to 100 extra prospects in any given draft. For draft class generation, between 3, 4, or 5 years, for how many years out the draft class can be generated. So if it's 2027 and I say 3 years, well, I already know that the players for the 2030 draft have been generated. Then we get down to draft class quality, which is on a 7-point scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 4 on 7 works for me, okay? And finally, this one's really cool, World Cup impact. So if you want a crazy tear storyline, whatever it might be, and you win the World Cup with, let's say, Italy, then there's going to be some more Italian prospects who get generated. World Cup results will change the generation odds, because each country has different odds for how many players are being generated. Certain number of percent from Canada, percent from USA, percent from Sweden. And if I have, let's say, again, Italy winning the World Cup, and that percent will go up, and I'll be seeing more Italians in the drafts in future years that they've been inspired by Team Italy. So that's really cool. I love that. So that's draft. Now into the draft lottery. This is completely pro version only for being adjustable. These are the default settings to have in the base version. Lottery turned on or off. You can control that if you're doing the pro version. Only non-playoff teams being in the lottery, you can turn that on or off. How many teams are in the lottery? Between 1 and 16 of the non-playoff teams. Lottery draw count between 1 and 16 draws, and max position moves. Can a player only jump by 10 positions, by 16 positions, no limit, by 5, whatever else it might be? That's up to you to decide as the commissioner of your league. And finally, how many lottery balls per position? The draft percentage per position is calculated by dividing a position ball count by the total number of lottery balls. So the last place team getting 185 balls, I can go ahead and change that if I'd like. Let's say from 185, I want to give them 190, raise their odds a little bit more. I press OK, and there you go. So that's one more thing that you can do to not only play with the draft lottery, but you can play with the odds that come with the lottery. So that's that for draft lottery. Now this is a big one. Moving over to visual, you might think that's like maybe for color blindness or something. Yes, of course it's here, colorblind mode being turned on or off, but you definitely want to check out player stats. This is a big one. What stats do you want to see available to you within the player stats screen? You might only care about their goals, assists, and points, let's say. For me, I'd want to put everything. I might not care at all about face-off wins. I might not care at all about Corsi. I might not care at all about whatever else, power play assists. I just want to have all of them available to me. I might never look at them, but they're there. It's up to you. Maybe if you know that you really don't care about them, you can just turn them off to make your screen look a little bit more clean when you look at a player's stats. Up to you. And finally, a player's potential. Do you want it to be text where it says the words top 6, the word elite, or do you want it to be a star system where that would be a separate conversation where a certain number of stars relates to that potential? Text just makes more sense to me because I can just read it, having to do that 0.5 second calculation in my head of what's, okay, 4 out of 5 stars equals what. And there you go. And finally, at the end, post-season recap. Do you want the game at the end of the season to recap who the Stanley Cup champions were, what the standings, what the points were, all that stuff? I'd keep that on as well. If you don't like it, just press dismiss when it pops up. Okay, now when you take care of all these big things on the left, I know this has been a huge section of the video, but that's what it is. Always in my guides, the most time goes to the settings because you want to get those understood. So coming over to the right side of the screen now, we see active leagues. Right now, the active leagues in my save file, my career save, would be the majors, the NHL, the minors, the AHL, and the O, Q, and Dub for the Canadian Junior Hockey Leagues. The game, once again, does not have the rights to use the actual names of these leagues. So if you're playing on the base version, this is what you're going to be dealing with. It's a bit annoying to have to just deal with Montreal and not the Montreal Canadiens, and having to play with Connor McPotter and Sidney Crisp instead of Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby. That's just unfortunately the way it goes because the game does not have the rights. If you are playing with the pro version, then before you finish your settings, you'll want to exit out and go click on roster. At roster, you can do a lot of things with editing: active roster, player editor, team editor, blah, blah, blah. But first, community rosters. At community rosters, there are a ton of great rosters. I can't really speak for which ones are better than other ones, but the one that I've liked using are the RSB rosters. So if I type in RSB and I see there's a few of them, there's opening night, there's beta, I'd probably use the most recent one, October 11th. That's when I'd use. You definitely want to use one that has a lot of megabytes to it. The more megabytes, the more editing that's been done. So for example, I've never tried this Poland HLM 25 beta roster, but it being 23 megs versus this one at 220 megs, I'd probably prefer to take the one at 220. So again, if I type in RSB, I'd go and download the most recent version. Sadly, it's not like they're being updated all the time. There's not a ton of community rosters that are like super updated to date because now we're in January of 2025. This is October of 2024. So a lot of trades and things like that wouldn't be perfect. I'd have to do some additions, some alterations on my own. So here's the big disclaimer of what's in here. Thank you very much. I click download version 1. You see that all the custom coaches, 689 families, 6,000 custom players, 7,000 plus faces, all the stats. Oh my goodness. So thank you very much to RSB there. I set that as my active roster. And now if I go out, I double check. What's my active roster? Let's see. Yes, RSB opening night rosters. It's in green. As you can see, the difference between the default rosters of 3.49 megs and this one at 310. So I take that as my roster. And now I go back into my settings. And now I see my active leagues. Look. Now I have the NHL, the PCHA, the WHA, the AHL, KHL, all the European leagues. Look at this. It's an embarrassment of riches when it comes to all the different leagues that are available to me. Just because these are available doesn't mean that I'll choose them all, but they're all there if I want them to be. That's where active leagues come in. I don't want all of these to be going on at the same time. If I check all of these off, the simulation will be significantly slower. With 10 or more, we're talking a slowdown. So I wouldn't want any of these really to be active. I don't really care about them. If you do care about them, then great, this game's for you. But again, I really care just about NHL, AHL, maybe some European leagues. It's not a huge deal. Now you might be saying, oh, what if I turn off these European leagues? Well, now where are these European, like let's say prospects, like in NHL, EA NHL, I go and I scout in Liga to draft players from there. Where are those prospects going to go? No problem. They'll now come to one of the Canadian teams. So if I turn off every league, let's say, except for the NHL, AHL, ECHL, for my 3 main teams associated to my NHL team, and then for the junior leagues, the Q, the O, and the Dub, let's say there are prospects from these other leagues that are turned off, like a Hagens or a Frondell, where would they go? They'd be automatically assigned to either the O, the Dub, or the Q. For example, my last sim that I just did, James Hagens was on the Halifax Mooseheads. So they won't be erased. They'll just be put onto another junior team. That being said, having these 5 leagues plus NHL, just 6, not the end of the world. I'd probably add in the NCAA, maybe the USHL, maybe, even the KHL, SHL League, some of the big ones, if you don't want to put all the smaller ones of the bigger category, like the NL and the DEL, whatever, it's up to you. You'll be notified of the winners of each league if you have it turned on, and it will slow down the simulation, as I said, if you have more of them turned on. So then, as you can see here, all these leagues are still around. They're not deleted, but are they active or not? Whether or not the word active is next to it is the most important part. So there you go. And that completes your settings, ladies and gentlemen. You can back out and finally start your own career. So with the pro version purchased and with the roster that I want now downloaded, settings are taken care of. The roster is active. If I want to do my own roster editing, I come here, I make sure I have the right active roster. I can now edit a player. So let's say I want to create a player, edit a player, buy out a player who has a contract, edit a player's name, edit a player's face, trade players. This is the big one right here. I'm not going to show you the details of every single setting because edit a player is just edit a player. You go find them, you click on them. Let's say whatever, you want to search for a player on my good old Montreal Canadiens. I want to edit Cole Caulfield. I can change his birth date, his handedness, his height, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to show you every single little detail because edit a player just means that, edit a player. It's up to you what you'd like to edit and for whatever reason. But the trade, that's going to be where you can update the roster for whatever happened in the real world. Let's say I want to do the Justin Barron and Alex Carrier trade that happened in the real world. Because my roster is dated to October 11th, I'll go ahead and, not choose the Ducks. I'll have to go and scroll to blah, 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 over to the Canadiens. I add Justin Barron, and then I scroll over to the Nashville Predators. I choose Carrier, and then I make the trade. I don't need to have any trade values be even or anything. I don't need to force a trade through. It's just essentially roster moves. So I can do that with trades, with draft picks, no problem, as well as all these other player edits. Editing a player's name, their face, all pro version perks, as well as the buyout editor with my custom roster downloaded. All the real buyouts of the NHL are accounted for. I can go in to edit one, like let's say for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, 7 more years at $397,000. I can go in to edit it, so I can change the duration, who's the player even for, what team is it being assigned to, what's the salary breakdown through each season, not even the same thing for every year. I can go ahead and edit those or even create a brand new one. I just want to, for whatever reason, just because. And I'm going to go ahead and make the Dallas Stars have to have a 14-year buyout, which is going to cost them whatever, $1 million. I just type in whatever I want over the course of multiple seasons. I can do that too, just if I feel like doing it. Love that customizability. From there, you also have Team Editor. As I mentioned, you can edit any of these teams. Let's say I want to edit whatever, the Columbus Blue Jackets. I want to change their name, their abbreviation, their location, what year were they founded, what are their colors, what is the model for their jersey retirement. It's what retired numbers do they already have? Which ones do I want to add to their retired numbers? I want to add that. I want to say Kyle Wood. I want to say number, I don't know, what number is Kyle Wood again? Google Images is telling me 3. So Kyle Wood, number 3. And then, actually, could I select the player? Don't tell me Kyle Wood is in here. Is Kyle? No, Kyle Wellwood. But maybe that's because Kyle Wood's never played in the NHL before. Let's say I want to retire Jose Theodore's number 60. I go into players and I type in there he is, Jose Theodore. There you go. I can add it right there. Where the Blue Jackets have now retired number 60 for Jose Theodore. Love that. And I also can add or remove rivals for the team. We spoke about rivalries before. The Blue Jackets have a minor rival in the Pittsburgh Penguins. I can add and say that the Calgary Flames are now a major rival. Update that. Woo, let's go. I can look at what awards have been won by the team. Is there nobody here? Maybe that's just team awards because, yeah, Steve Mason won and Rick Nash won. Okay. And there you go. So I'm not going to save any of that stuff. I just wanted to show you what I can do as a team editor. League editor, I can look at any of the leagues that are in, especially in my downloaded custom roster. What is the location? What's the abbreviation? What tier is it? If I go to one of the bigger ones, like let's say the American Hockey League, I can change the logo for the league. Even for the teams in the NHL, I can change the logo to any image that I want. The name, the abbreviation, the location, the strength, age minimum, requirements like that. What awards do they present? Look at all the things that you can do in here. This is crazy. Oh my goodness, that's league editor. Staff editor, same thing. Real staff, Barry Trotz, Kent Hughes, all these guys. Automatically, any GMs are AGMs because you become the GM, so just keep that in mind too. You can look between all the leagues. I wonder, in the British Hockey Championship, are these... Okay, so no real coaches here. So this custom roster is great, but doesn't have the real coaches from the British Hockey Championship. I'm disgusted. No, we'll be okay. City editor. Can I create my own cities even? This is Thanos mode. And roster tools... Reality can be whatever I want it to be, exactly. Remove duplicates, if there are any duplicates in your roster, okay. Searching for duplicates, it will remove any of those. Great, but there shouldn't be. That's probably more of a me thing if I've created my own roster and accidentally I created somebody twice. And then also fix common errors. Use this tool if you're experiencing issues with your roster. It will try to fix the most common errors automatically. Honestly, I'm not sure what that might be, but hey, thanks, success, great, fix common errors. And there you go, generated face pack. I already deleted these I already downloaded these myself. I can delete them if I no longer want them. The generated face pack, roster independent add-ons, an AI generated face pack for generated players. Generated faces will only be assigned to generated players with at least one game in the major league, aka the NHL. User created and existing players are excluded. So it's not like EA NHL where every time you go over the player, their face pops up. You don't see their face very often unless you really go into their profile and click on the player. So I wouldn't say generated faces are a must. I don't really care about a gray silhouette for a generated player in HLM as much as I do for a gray silhouette for a player in EA NHL, but it's up to you. I did go ahead and download those, but if you want them or don't want them, you can delete them after you do. Totally up to you. There's everything you can do with the roster. Pro version is added. I can go ahead and start a career mode from the history mode button right here, or I could just press new career and history mode will be one of the options to me among a few others. So in EA NHL, it's just classic, expansion, fantasy, or custom. Here you get classic, history mode, which means 1917, 42, 60, 80, 2000, 2010, 2021, 22, or 23. Battle Royale, which is really fun. Challenge, expansion draft, or fantasy draft. So classic mode is classic. That's gonna be what I'm showing you in today's video. History mode allows you to choose one of those years. I'll get into that right now just to quickly show you before I get back to the other ones. Let's say I'm starting all the way back in 1917. Of course, there's only 3 teams at that time, the Canadiens, the Senators, and the Toronto Arenas. Maybe one with a few more teams. Let's go 1942 instead. 1942, okay, the Bruins, the original 6 are here, great. So let's say I'm taking over the New York Rangers in the original 6 era. But if I go with the default settings, that will mean things like the World Cup, the World Juniors are still happening. If I don't want the World Cup or World Juniors to be happening in the 1940s, then I'd have to turn those off. The only difference in the settings, keep in mind, is history mode. With automatic league changes turned on, you'll have the actual history of teams joining the league start to happen. The 1967 expansion, the Sabres and the Canucks in 1970, etc., etc. Those division changes and teams joining the league or teams leaving the league will happen automatically as those years come to pass, as they've happened in the real world. But I believe that's the only thing that's different when looking at your settings for a history mode. Then of course you start your mode, you go from there, and we'll be looking at the actual mode in just a moment. There's also Battle Royale. One team gets eliminated each year. Will you be the last one standing? So every year, the team that's last place in the standings will be eliminated. So 32 teams goes down to 31, down to 30, all the way until there's just one team left. So of course, in the last season, so in like year 30, I guess, there would be just 2 teams left. So that's really fun and different and just new, a fun challenge just to do something different. That's really awesome. You choose your team, you can start with that team or replace that team. Again, nothing really changes for the settings. It's just that now there's teams that are getting eliminated and removed from the league. And when that team gets removed, the players that were on it get erased from the league as well. So if the Blackhawks get eliminated in year 1, then Connor Bedard, Seth Jones, they all disappear from the National Hockey League. They don't go to free agency or anything like that. And also I've been saying one team, but you can also control how many teams are removed due to the Battle Royale. Once you choose a team, you go into Battle Royale and you can choose whether it be between 1 and 5 teams that get eliminated each year. And those teams will be highlighted in red at the bottom of the standing. So if it's one team, you'll have 32 teams and number 32 is highlighted in red. If it's 4 teams, then teams 29, so 29, 30, 31, 32, 29 to 32 would be highlighted in red, let you know that those are the teams that are currently slated to be eliminated. So even though the season is over, you didn't make the playoffs, you're still fighting to not be eliminated from existence. Again, Thanos mode. So that's classic mode, history mode, battle royale, challenge, try to win with every team. This gives you 3 years to win a Stanley Cup with that team. So in theory, if you got to win a cup with 32 different teams, and it actually goes in order. I didn't know it went in order. My apologies. So it starts with Tampa Bay Lightning, win a championship with Tampa Bay before the end of 2026-27. So that's what I'm starting off with doing. Normal settings, I start my career mode. There you go. So once that's done, I can move on to Colorado, Winnipeg. I believe it goes down the list like this, and the Sharks will be the last one. Again, I haven't done like 40 years in this challenge mode to know everything about it, but I believe that's the way it goes, where you have to work your way down the checklist, and each one unlocks after you've achieved the goal, which is winning a championship. Expansion draft, simple enough. You're joining the league as the 33rd NHL team. You can actually be a different team and watch the expansion happen. So I could be Columbus and have Houston join the league. I don't need to be Houston per se. So this is division configuration. Let's say I like how the divisions are. I just press continue, and then I say, okay, what is the expansion team joining the league? Let's say, scroll down to a random team. It is the Montreal Saints. Welcome aboard. Select the Montreal, and I give them a minor team as well. It'll be the St. John's Ice Caps, and then let's choose an ECHL team for St. John's minor league. That'll be the Windsor Skyhawks. And now the Montreal Saints added an expansion draft team. Beautiful, thank you. And I've been automatically placed in the Metropolitan Division. I could click on Edit Division Configuration, and I could just move Montreal to the Atlantic. Yeah, click on the empty slot. Yeah, again, I don't usually do this too much, but that's how it would go. Close it off. Choose what team I want to have. Like I said, I can just have the Saints exist without having to be them. I can still be the Canadians instead. The expansion draft starts. You got to protect certain players. I start my career as always. Here we go, Montreal Canadiens expansion draft. And then once it begins, because I haven't chosen the team that is joining the NHL, I have to set my protection list of my players who are eligible to be taken in an expansion draft. I need to choose 7 forwards, 3D, 1 goalie, or 8 skaters, 1 goalie. Carey Price is already automatically that goalie. I can't protect Montembeault because Carey Price, due to his contract, as it says, his contract requires protection in the expansion draft. Same for Brendan Gallagher, despite their negative trade value, unfortunately. Look how much negative value Josh Anderson has. So if I said I want to protect all my, I can't do it, Montembeault, second goalie. I keep going, I protect all my highest value guys. Now it's too much. Hold on, I got to make sure I'm satisfying these requirements at the top. I could do 1 more defenseman. There you go. And now too many skaters. So you play around with that, you create your protection list, then the expansion draft happens. And if you're the team joining as an expansion, just randomly selected the Abbotsford Heat here and threw them in the NHL, if I'm the one who's going to be selecting, then I'll be presented with a list of all of the eligible players first. Matthew Barzal, Thomas Harley, Brock Besser, what? So I can sort by all the players, or I can start scrolling through each team. So I need 1 player from each team, obviously. But I'd probably take the biggest guys first. So already I know that my Islanders guy is going to be Barzal. I know my Dallas guy is going to be Thomas Harley. I know my Canucks guy is going to be Brock Besser. Yeah, that's probably going to be what I'm doing right there. And as I draft from this main screen, it will remove players who are from teams I already had a selection from. So now I'm at pick number 32. I've taken from every team except Tampa Bay. Only Tampa Bay players are left eligible on this list. So Connor Sheary, let's say I take him. I come to the end of the draft and I exit it, only to find that, look what I did on purpose. If I go to my lineup, I selected 1,000,000 goalies. So this is the only place that I have a bit of a question mark, as when I'm setting my protection list, I'm forced to follow certain requirements, but when I draft the expansion team itself, I'm not forced to draft a certain number of defensemen or goalies. I need to be the one who's careful to be building an actual team. If I take too many goalies or too many defensemen or not enough whatever, the game will not tell me that. So be very mindful when you're crafting your team through the expansion draft. The game will not give you warnings of you have too much of this or too little of that. You have to be the one who does it. And now finally, the last mode that you can choose is the fantasy draft. Fantasy draft, very similar to what we just saw in the expansion draft, where you're choosing players who are available to you. Now, if I start off as the Carolina Hurricanes, let's say, whatever, just choose any team that you want, go through your settings, everything's good, start it off. Now, the only difference here is that every player in the league is being put into a big pot to be drafted from. So if I pick number 1, I can go ahead and take Connor McDavid. If I pick number 3, maybe I get, I don't know, Nikita Kucherov. But again, I need to be mindful of the team that I'm building because the game won't tell me you have too many of this or too little of that. So the draft board here, Toronto picks first. Where is Carolina picking? Oh, number 5. There you go. All right, 5th overall pick. So I don't believe you can re-simulate that. You have to exit and try it again to get a different position. So now you can sim to user pick, just like the real draft that we'll see later on. Sim the entire round or sim the entire draft. If I just want to sim to my pick at number 5, it'll tell me, okay, so if I look at the draft board, I see it went McDavid, Makar, Matthews, and Bedard. So now with my selection, I can go ahead and select according to trade value, according to overall. I can sort by different things. Nathan MacKinnon might be my guy. I'll select him, and there you go. Nathan MacKinnon, sim to my next pick. It's pretty quick. Look how I click the button, bang. All those selections were done. I'm already at my next one, ready to go. Elias Pettersson, select him, sim to user, boom, ready for my next one. No need to wait for long periods. Not even like short periods, not a 5-second, not a 10-second wait, boom, instant, it's ready. So that's a fantasy draft. And once your team is built, you can start the actual franchise mode, which we'll finally look at right now. And that would be in classic mode. Classic mode, so division configuration, advanced options, the major league is the NHL, all that stuff that we've already looked at, so we can bypass the settings. I've done a lot of Canadians here. Let's go ahead and take the Colorado Avalanche. Let's go with them. So start my career with them. I could replace them, or I could start my career with them, which is what I'm doing. I have all my settings already ready to go. The game tells me I have more than 10 active leagues, and having too many could reduce simulation speed, as I mentioned before. I'm comfortable with what I have, so I would just go ahead and say start career, and now it will bring me to the main hub. And one last thing I just want to quickly interject with here while we're talking about the creation of a new save file. If you have Pro Mode, you can also transfer over save files between devices. So let's say, for example, I go into Load Career and I want to transfer over that Hurricanes Fantasy Draft save file. I would click on the Carolina save file, I'd click on Options, and then press Export. It would pop up my files, I would name it as something, and then I'm good to go. I could send it to myself, whatever else, whatever I'm trying to do between devices, etc. And then again, once I'm back here on the main screen, I click on Load Career, but this time I would press on Import here at the bottom. I click on Import, my files would pop up, I would double click on that file, and then now I would have successfully transferred over that save file of that career. So in my mind, that's a feature that's not always available in every game, so I appreciate that it's available here, and another reason in my mind for why I would want to get the Pro Mode. And now here we go. You've chosen your team, you've done all your settings, you've done all your customization. It's time to start your franchise save file. You're instantly started at September 1st, 2024 in HLM 25, and you're at the hub, which is called the Office. On the left side of your screen, these are basically all the different tabs or screens that you can access at different times in the year for different reasons. But you're always going to start off at the Office. The Office is your most important place because you can see player leaders, for points obviously, injuries, standings, inbox notifications instead of actually going to the inbox. Just want to get a quick little look at the headlines, your team's record, cap space, salary cap, contract status, average age, all that stuff is available to you there, as well as your team ratings, what's coming up on the calendar in the very near future. You can just click on calendar right here. Instead of actually going to the tab itself, you can have a quick access to calendar, roster move, scouts, search, all that. Instead of having to scroll down and finding, like, let's say the search icon down here, you could just click search right here on the Office tab. So when I'm at the Office, I won't show you these. As I scroll down each tab, I'll do a little timestamp probably for each one of those. So at the Office, that's what you can see. Not a lot that you can do, but there's a lot that you can see and a lot of information that can be fed to you. There are, however, just two major things to note in the bottom left corner of when you're on Office. You'll see My Career and League Settings down here in the corner. Over My Career, it says View Stats and Change Team. So over here, if I click, I can see kind of like a GM tracker on the right, number of Stanley Cups, President's Trophies, Calder Cups, and if I've been playing tens and dozens of years, I'll be able to see the history of how many wins back in 2036, losses, overtime losses, etc. But on the left, I can also change my team. So although I've created this save file with the Avalanche, I could do it on day 1, I could do it in year 25, whatever I feel like. At any point in time, I can change this. You know what? I feel like now being in charge of the Devils. And boom, here I am! No big, long process of transferring things over and loading and asking you questions. No, boom, there you are. Now you're in charge of the Devils. So you can change your team there at any time. You can go back to your team that you had originally if you'd like as well. And also now in the bottom left corner, you'll see league settings. Here you can set a couple of things. If you click on teams, you could first and foremost remove a team. If you turn this setting on, I could just say, hey, you know what? New York Islanders, bye-bye. I feel like taking you away. I can send the players to free agency and remove the Islanders, or just delete the players who are also on the team, kind of like in challenge mode. So that's one option I can have if I'm removing a team. I can also set an expansion draft. The next expansion draft will be held on June 2026. So even though I'm in classic mode and not in expansion draft mode, here I can set an expansion draft to take place starting in June of 2026. I can choose whatever team I want. Let's say I want the Boston Braves to come in. I select their minor league team. It's going to be the Broome Dusters, and then their ECHL team is going to be the Chicago Cougars. There you go. Boston Braves added as an expansion draft team. To set its division and conference, come to this page next season. So it's already in the works. It's going to happen. And when it comes time to expand, I'll have to, just as we saw before, set my protection list and everything as if we're going into an expansion draft mode. Just that here I can set it to happen in whatever year I like. It's whatever, 2054, and now I want to just add an expansion. I can do that. I can also go ahead and say, hey, conferences are 2. I feel like having 4 conferences now. Let's just change that on the fly right here, right now. Why not? I'd have to reassign some teams down here, Conference 3, Conference 4, give it a title. How many divisions do I want? I want 16 divisions with 4 conferences. Even though I didn't set these all up before I started the career save, I can do it now at this point, at any point that I would like, actually. Keep in mind, however, that all these changes you're making to conference and division configuration will only take effect next year. So now it's 2024-25. I will not see these changes come into effect once I press save until 2025-26. So just because I do it and I press save doesn't mean it happens right away. The season has already started. 2025-26, expansion is on its way for the Boston Braves. All that is good to go. That's when I go into teams. Now, if I go ahead and click on settings over here, I can also touch upon the draft lottery, and all the active leagues and stuff like that. Just another way to get to that setting, which I could have also done by going on the left and scrolling down to settings right here too. Now from here, let's scroll down to inbox. There'll be a lot of mail coming your way, but when you begin, here's Chris McFarland, who is now the AGM. Congratulations, new beginnings. You're now the GM. You kicked me out of a job. Welcome to the big leagues. We're thrilled to announce blah, blah, blah. Best of luck. They tell you a few things such as roster overview. Take a look at your team's current roster. What do you think the strengths, weaknesses, and potential areas for improvement are? Staff management. You can check out your coaches, scouts, medical staff, hire, fire, all that. Scouting reports. Stay ahead of the game by scouting upcoming talent. A comprehensive scouting system will provide you with valuable insights into potential draft picks. League news and updates. Keep an eye on the league news to stay informed about trades, injuries, and other events that may impact your team, and feel free to explore the different features and options available to you. The journey to championship glory begins now, and every decision you make will have a ripple effect on the course of your team's history. I feel inspired. Let's do it. So that's where you're going to see your primary inbox, all mail, and stuff that's just unread. Over the course of the season, there will be a lot of messages here, so really don't worry about it too much. I'll show you what I mean later on, but a lot of the information might not be interesting to you. But again, if you want to see every little piece of everything, that is your prerogative. At the calendar, you'll see one full year from September 1st, 2024, all the way to August 31st, 2025. Different icons mean different things, like here's where retirements happen, here's where Hall of Fame inductions happen, stuff like that mean different things, and all the games, of course, along the way. So calendar, I can sim here. I can click on a day and sim to that day. No events on that day. It tells me my record, my last 10 games, what position am I in. Those will be changing. Like if I'm simming 2 months at a time, I want those things that I'm watching to be informing me of, okay, when might I stop for a reason? Okay, we've lost too many in the last 10. Let's stop it here. Our position has dropped too much. Let's stop it there. That's going to be very important to me, especially if I'm doing those quicker simulations of one season every 2-3 minutes. I want to go for, like we said, hundreds of years. So that's your calendar. We're not simulating just yet. You can also look at the schedule. The schedule just tells you your games. So what kind of game is it as well? Preseason, season, home or away. What day is it? What team are you against? Scroll through all of that. That's your schedule within your calendar. Now, before we start simulating, let's look at the team itself. Once you start your save file, you can check out your lineup. Now, this is essentially the edit lines screen. For your lines, you have 5-on-5 lines, and you have special teams, which is just your power play and your penalty kill. No PP1, 4-man PP2, 3-man PK2, 3-man PK3, shootout, all that. It's very simple. Just your 5-on-5 lines for your forwards, your defense, your goalie, and of course your special units there. To change a player, it's pretty simple. Just click on a player and rotate them right there. Drouin and Middlestat being swapped around, no problem. Now, the different colors mean different strengths of chemistry. You don't need to get too caught up in, oh, it's good chemistry or bad chemistry. It's not like franchise mode in the EA NHL series. If, for example, and the colors go from dark red to light red to yellow to green to blue. So if I have red chemistry, that is just because, let's say, for example, on defense, I have 2 defensive defensemen together. That doesn't mean that they're going to be playing poorly together. It just means that they have no offensive chemistry. They're both defensive defensemen, so it won't be a strong offensive defensive pair. You get what I'm saying? So it's not anything to do with, oh, these players don't mesh together. It's to do with the strength of their offensive capabilities. So Middlestat, McKinnon, and Rantanen as 2 playmakers and a sniper with those overalls and everything, yeah, that's blue chemistry. Drouin, Colton, and O'Connor as playmaker, power forward, and then 2-way forward. Again, it doesn't mean that they don't play well together, but it means that with O'Connor there as a 2-way forward, the offensive potential is not as high as it would be if maybe I put Miles Wood, no, still about the same. Maybe if I put a sniper in Kiviranta, there you go, a sniper in Kiviranta. He's not a better player, he's a lower overall than O'Connor, 84 versus 80, but Kiviranta is a sniper, which raises the potential of offensive output, not the performance of the line itself. Very big difference between chemistry here and chemistry in the EA NHL world. So having said that, we can touch upon some of the other elements of your lineup. During the preseason, you of course have a lot of extra forwards here. By the end of the preseason, as the game tells you, the top 19 players have to be cut. As when everyone's fully healthy, you can only have 14 forwards, 7D, and 2 goalies. Any more than that, and your lineup is ineligible. So with injuries and stuff like that, of course, there are exceptions to be made. But with everybody healthy, 14 forwards, 7D, 2 goalies. At any time, of course, you can hit best lines. That changed up what I had just done previously. But if for whatever reason I really wanted Kiviranta on that second line to give the blue chemistry, I can lock Kiviranta there with this little lock button right here. Touch a player to lock him in. Boom, I did it right there. Now I turn off the lock. I turn it on by pressing here. I turn it off by pressing over there. Turn it on the left, off on the right. Now Kiviranta is locked in there, so no matter what other changes I make, those will be fixed when I press best lines, but not Kiviranta, who's locked into this place. I don't need to have a big long conversation with him and convince him and beg him and watch the back and forth, the text being typed. No, I can just press lock. That's it. It's as simple as that, EA. So wonderful. Kiviranta is locked into that spot. My 5-on-5, my special teams, all that good stuff. Now the rotation, this is beautiful. For my goalie rotation, Georgiev and Ananin, let's say I don't have a lot of trust in Georgiev and I really like Ananin, or they're similar overalls, whatever it might be. The slider here goes from 50% to 85%. We're talking about splitting the starts. So there's no exact numbers here, but if this would be 50, this would probably be about 58.5. This is like 67.5% of starts. This would be what, like 77% to 76% of starts and 85% of starts. Not an exact science, but it allows you to play around with the splits to say, okay, I want it to be a 50-50 split. There you go. Georgiev and Ananin, you're starting the same amount of games. A slight edge to Georgiev, or maybe all the way 85% for Georgiev getting the vast majority. And if for whatever reason I want Georgiev to actually be the backup despite his higher overall, you have to turn auto rotation off when making any goalie changes. So turn off auto rotation. That allows me to even bring in Mandolesi, let's say, and I bring Ananin out, and Mandolesi becomes the starter, Georgiev's the backup. This is kind of like the turning auto rotation off is like turning editing on. Then once you're done doing your editing, turn it back on, and then let's say Mandolesi is the starter and I want him starting 85% and Georgiev getting the other 15%, I can do that too. And then if I press best lines, it goes back to how it was. Georgiev starter, Ananin backup, and Mandolesi back as an extra. So that's that. I think pretty simple. I see my injured players here. Lekkonen's out for 63 days. Nichushkin's out for 75 days. I can also look here. I see my cap space, my offensive, defensive, and goalie ratings. I can even scroll through other teams and do like this, like a view lines type thing. I can't make changes to Dallas's roster, but I can see what their lines look like, what their injuries are, what their power play lines are, who their coaches are. I can see everything that I would want to about Dallas. And then finally, if I want to go and switch to the AHL lines, I go to lineup, and then in the top right corner, I click on the NHL logo. I go down to the AHL, and now I have the Colorado Eagles lineup. I can also swap people around here, best lines here, lock people here, do determine the goalie splits here, everything the same. Down the QMJHL, I can look at lineups, but I can't edit lineups. So I can edit lines in the NHL or the AHL, or I can look at the lines of any other team in any of these other leagues, which I have set as active. Let's say I want to go see the KHL. Let's see how our good friend Kyle Wood is doing over on Red Star. And where is he? Where is Kyle Wood? You know I need my Kyle Wood out here. Hold on. Kyle Wood. Sorry to go on a rabbit trail here. There he is. Kyle Wood, channel favorite. He's a free agent. I guess his contract ran out, or I don't know what, but Kyle Wood, a free agent. Oh, I'm definitely going to sign Kyle Wood in whatever series we do here. Beautiful. Anyways, back to what I was saying at the lineup. And if I actually go back and switch to the National Hockey League, Colorado, wonderful. From here, I can click on roster moves, or I can go to the tab that is roster moves. In roster moves, I can move players between the NHL, AHL, and ECHL, or even other leagues. but I'm not, yeah, no other players are eligible, so I'm not exactly sure when that would come up. But anyways, let's say in the NHL, especially when the preseason is going to be over, I want to send people down. I want to send these 3 guys down to Colorado, or I can even send one down to Colorado. One's going to the WHL, you see this? So this guy, because he's not eligible for the AHL or the ECHL, he would be sent back to the WHL. Let's say Chase Bradley to the AHL, and I want Barons to be sent to the ECHL. I could do that. Confirm all 3. Are you sure? One's going to be loaned out. Can't call him up anymore this season. No problem. They get sent to those places. And now it shows, okay, I have 1 forward in Colorado. I have 1 D down in Utah with the ECHL squad. Exactly. Waivers are also turned on, I believe. I think I had put that setting correct. So if I try to send down Cale Makar, yeah, he'll have to pass through waivers. So preseason waivers is a setting, and I had those turned on. So be careful of having players get claimed during that time as well. So roster moves, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Players can get moved between the NHL, AHL, ECHL, and junior leagues, etc. Now, onto the trade screen. This is a really fun one. The trade screen, this is unique. It starts off with just your normal type of trade where it's between 2 teams. There's a trade value bar and all that. A player's name being green means that the other team is interested in acquiring them, and a red means that the other team is interested in trading that player away. So let's see, the Ducks want Casey Middlestat, and they're okay with giving up Frank Vetrano. Now the value is very much in Anaheim's favor, or they're getting the better deal, however you want to put it. My goal is that I want the value to be at this bar in the middle or over. Anything over means I'm winning the trade pretty much. You can get a little bit over, but pretty much trades will go through plus or minus a few ticks from this middle bar. Obviously, if it's more this way, then the team will say thank you very much and take the deal. But as soon as it's at this bar or a little bit over, you're technically winning due to value. Anything in this area, that'll still be accepted. But as soon as it goes too much the other way, they won't want to do it anymore. So if I say Anaheim, I want Vetrano, and I also want Leo Carlson. Well, now, look at that. It would be very much a trade in my favor, and Anaheim would not want to do it. It's a simple, do I want to trade? Yes, trade declined. No big message, no insulting message that you receive or anything like that, nothing. So I can remove Leo Carlson, and now I want to add, okay, what's just a little bit more? Maybe I put a 1st round pick. Oh no, that's still too much. I don't know what to do. No problem. I can just remove right here. I can say autocomplete. Vetrano and what? Vetrano and Isaac Lundstrom would get it around this point. In my mind, I'd say I'm still losing this trade a little bit. So I'd want to say, okay, also throw in, I don't know, throw in this 5th round pick, sorry. Now it's in my favor by just a hair, and I'd be willing to do this at least due to trade value. Casey Middlestat with his modified no trade clause going to Anaheim for Vetrano, Lundstrom, and a 5th. Technically, I'm not sure if it would go through because he has that modified no trade clause. I'd have to actually click on it. You know what? Why not? Why not? For the sake of the experiment. If I try to trade accepted. So the Ducks were on his modified no trade clause, and the Ducks accept that deal. Thank you very much. Now, if I'm looking to do a separate trade, like let's say I go back to my players, and let's say, I don't know, Devon Tays I put out there. I want to trade him to the Ducks. Let's say I want Leo Carlson. The trade value obviously is not interesting to Anaheim, but let's say we add another team to this deal, make it a 3-team trade. This is a really cool feature. Let's say now I want Boston to be sending Zaka to Anaheim to make them feel better about losing Leo Carlson. So in this deal, I'm getting too good of a trade. The Ducks are not getting enough from me. They're getting more from Boston, and Boston's just saying, hey, why am I even doing this? What am I getting out of this? They're nothing, because Boston has not received anything in this trade. If I press autocomplete, let's see Callum Ritchie and a 1st to Boston to make it worth for Zaka being traded. Goalie I've added to the deal for Leo Carlson. Carlson comes to me, Tays goes to Anaheim, and everybody is even around that middle point for trade value, making it to a point that they say, I'm okay with this value being dealt. Now, Devon Tays, I did all that, but Devon Tays had a no move clause, so it would have been all that work for nothing. I clicked trade, and then it said, Devon Tays' contract clause prevents a trade to this team. So too bad, so sad. Keep this tip in mind though when it comes to clauses. Even if a player has a full no move or no trade clause, when that player is in the final year of their contract, their no move or no trade clause will turn into a modified no trade clause. And that, whether or not they're open to be trading to you, will depend on the color of it. So Pavel Zacha, for example, has a modified no trade clause, which is green, meaning he could be traded to me. Meanwhile, look at Brad Marchand. He has a red modified no trade clause. He will not want to be open to coming to my team. team, even though it's 1 year left on his deal. It's a modified no trade clause. It is red. He cannot come to Colorado. So that's the same for players that I want to acquire, as well as players on my own team that I'd be wanting to trade away. If they have a green modified no trade clause to that team, then they are tradable, even though the last, let's say, 7 years of their contract was a full no move clause. In the final year of it, there will be some teams that they are open to being traded to. So keep that in mind for players that you want to get, but you can't just get them yet. You can wait till the last year of it and cross your fingers and hope. And sorry to interject, but also while talking about the color of trade clauses, of course, green means go, red means no, but the gray means that there's a clause that is currently inactive. So the player is either under 27 or he lacks the 7 years of experience. Therefore, the player can be traded without considering the clause, which will kick in the future. So back to finishing off the trade screen now. You can also click down here on preview, which just allows you to visualize it a little bit differently. If you're getting a bit confused about who's going where and for what, you can look at it that way. There's also salary retention, one more thing here. So if a team can do it trade value wise, but the money is just not working, let's say Boston was over the salary cap, Zacha is going to Anaheim. So actually, let's say Anaheim couldn't take on Pavel Zacha's contract. The Bruins could retain up to 50%. They trade him to me, who then Colorado retains 50%. And then he gets traded to Anaheim, which means that he's actually at 25% of his salary. So double salary retention through the 3-team trade. By doing that, if I scroll down and click close, now the trade value changes. The Bruins are even less willing to do that because now they have to retain salary. The Ducks are even more happy because they get Pavel Zacha at 25% of his cap, and it didn't really affect the Avalanche too much. So not only salary retention, but double salary retention are both possible for you here in the trade screen, which is incredible. Let me just refresh all this now. Another really awesome element to tell you about trades is the option that you have to add conditional draft picks. So let's say, for example, I'm adding a first round pick, or actually, yeah, the Avalanche have a 2026 first round pick. I'm sending it to the Anaheim Ducks, but I want to add a condition to it. So I click on the pick and I'll press edit condition. I have a few different selections here. I could say it's the higher of a couple of picks or lower of a couple of picks. Let's say I had 2 firsts. So I'll show you that example to really hammer home exactly what I'm saying. So I need to have 2 of the same picks. Let's say the Avalanche have 2 fourths in 2025. So I need to have 2 in the same round for this option of the clause to happen. So I'll click on one of them, I'll go edit condition, and I'll say, okay, I want to choose the higher of these 2 picks. The secondary pick would be the backup. So it's between the Vancouver 4th and the Colorado 4th. And then it gives you a little resume of what you've done. So you're trading the higher of the 2025 4th round picks between Vancouver and Colorado selections. I press add, and now the condition is there. So it removes the Colorado 4th and then adds the condition to that Vancouver 4th, so that whichever one ends up being the better selection would end up going to Anaheim when the 2025 draft comes around. Another condition that you could add, let's say I go back to that first round pick, I go to edit condition, I can also say draft protection. So the pick itself can be number 1 overall pick protected, top 5 protected, top 10 protected, all the way to top 31 protected. So let's say I want it to be a top 10 protected pick. The secondary pick, if it ends up being a top 10 pick, the backup would be that, let's say they get, okay, a 2028 first round pick. And then again, it gives you the little resume so you know exactly what you're doing. It's a 2026 first if the pick is outside of the top 10, but if it ends up being in the top 10, it ends up that it'll be a 2028 first that goes to Anaheim. Add that condition, there you go, all locked into the system. The last condition that you can add for any pick that is not in the first rounds, between rounds 2 and 7, you can add a playoff condition. So if I go to, and I select the second round pick, and I put playoff round, it might say round 1, round 2, semifinal, final, or cup champions. So let's say I want to be cup champions here, and the secondary pick would be, end up, whatever, let's say a 2025 fourth, or whatever. So I'm trading you a 2025 second round pick if I win the Stanley Cup, but if I don't, I ended up then trading you a 4th round pick. This is what you'd probably be offering around the trade deadline, where you're saying, okay, I want to acquire this player who's on an expiring deal. If we win the Stanley Cup, you get a second, but if not, it's going to be whatever else I put as the secondary pick. I add those conditions, I send the trade, there you go. This is so simple, and it adds so much. Fantastic. Can't say enough about this. I love the possibility that you have to add conditions to draft picks. Amazing. Finally, one last thing to look at, a couple of things actually, would just be the block and the history. So in trade block, you can set what your needs or surpluses are, just like an EA NHL franchise. So who are my players on the block? I can put 3 players here. What's their trade value, their potentials, all that. We'll talk about the colors of the potential in a moment. I can look at who my untradables are. If I put a player on the untradable list right here, so clicking on edit, and then let's say I put Cale Makar, I will never receive any offers for Cale Makar no matter what. Until I take him off, there will never be any offers that come my way for a player who's on an untradeable list. What are my needs? First line winger, second line winger. What are my surpluses? Second pair D, third pair D, etc. Now, here are two really cool things about your needs. Number one, whatever your needs are, players in free agency will be interested about that. So we're not talking about free agency yet, but if I, for example, want to sign a second line winger in free agency and I just don't have that salary cap by like 200K, I can come to my trade block, cheese it a little bit, so keep that in mind, maybe it's a little cheese. I put second line winger as my need. I go back to free agency and now the player says, oh, you need second liners. I'd be a good fit here. And now he's more willing to take just a little bit less on his contract. That's a little tip you can keep in mind. Another really cool thing here is if I need a second line winger, I can click on second line winger and boom, all the second line wingers in the league just popped up in front of me, sorting by trade value, by years left, by their defensive attributes, their whatever other things I want to look at. I can sort by anything and see all the second line wingers in the NHL. That is crazy to me. I love that. Yes, you can go through the player search, which we'll look at later by looking down here on the magnifying glass on search, but just clicking on first line winger or second line winger and having all those players pop up is such a huge help. Surplus second pair D shows me that as well on my own team because we're talking about surplus now. My surplus fourth line wingers are there, so on and so forth. So that would be the trade block. I can click find trade, which is just like the same as always. I can just click on a player, find me a trade from around the league for whoever would want to offer me something. A first round pick from Dallas for Logan O'Connor, Schmid in a second from Vegas, a first from Edmonton, so on and so forth. I can decline, I can edit, I can accept, or I can even add other pieces to it like draft picks and whatnot. And then also I can look at the league block. I can see all the players, all the left wings on the block, all the centers on the block, all the right wings on the block. I can add and remove. I can see, give me the left Ds and the right Ds, show me only the right Ds, show me the goalies. Of course, goalies can't mix with forwards, but I can mix all the different, with skaters, but I can mix the skaters together. Crazy, so helpful. It's incredible. I can't say enough about the great things in HLM. That is awesome. So that's everything to do with the trade block. And then trade history, obviously no trades have happened yet, aside from the one that we just made, but we can look through years of trade history where, okay, we did Vetrano and Lundstrom in the 5th for Casey Mills back on Sunday, September 1st of 2024. All the history of all the teams are going to be there for the trades that have been made with starting at the first day of your save file. And I think that's just about it for trades. Yeah, you'll click on edit for anything that you want to edit. It'll allow you to add or remove certain things. Okay, so there are the trades. Now onto the contract screen. At contracts, you can see a few things at this point in the season in September. I can see who are my expiring players, who are my unsigned players, and who are my players who are expiring and are eligible for an extension. If I'm understanding it correctly, the expiring players are guys who are expiring from like their entry-level contract, and the extension eligible guys are players who have already received contracts in their career. So no matter who I'm clicking on, let's say I go to Mikko Rantanen, over here I can see what he's asking for. He wants 8 by 8.855 with a no move clause involved as well. So if I click on him, I can start playing around with the numbers, and I can see, like, let's say if I move it down to 6 years, oh, now he's down to medium interest. If I move it down to 6 years at 8.5, really low interest. That's with the no move clause as well. If I take that out, unclick it, then press close, it's very low interest. So to get him wanting to sign, you got to be looking at least at high interest. So if I add back the no trade clause, he'd be willing to do, let's see, 8.255 at 8 years with a no move clause gets him to high interest. High interest more often than not will be accepted, but if you want a guarantee of acceptance no matter what, you got to go up to very high interest. So 8 by 9.03, that's a guaranteed acceptance. You don't got to worry about that. He will always be yes, at least in my understanding. 8 by 9.03 with a no move clause, very high interest. Mikko Rantanen would accept that. It'll still take the day to pass over in the simulation that he'll only accept it tomorrow, but he will accept it. And as you scroll through the years, you'll also see, okay, what's his different ask for different years? If I go 2 years, oh, he wants 10.98. So press copy. It's medium interest. Just because that's what he wants for 2 years, it doesn't mean that's the contract he actually wants to sign. Just because that's his salary request doesn't mean that's the contract he wants. 8 years at 8.855, I copy that instead. It goes down to high interest, etc., etc. So you can play around with this whether it's free agency or contracts. And over here, of course, it'll tell me my cap space for next year. My cap space right now, I believe it's like, is it 6 million for the Avalanche? But next year, it would be like 23-ish million with Georgiev, Drouin, all these guys expiring. I traded out Middlestat, etc. There'd be more money to play with. So Rantanen being extended would not be a hard thing to do. So I don't think there's much to say here. It's just, you have your numbers up here for what your breakdown of forwards, defense, goalies are, salary cap. You can look at the contracts this way as well. I think this is actually an even better way. This is a good way to look at, okay, who are all my left wingers and sort them by overall, let's say. Who are all my centers in my NHL and AHL? Okay, I got 1, 2, 3, 4 in my NHL. I got 1, 2, 3, whatever you want to do. Right wings, left D, put 2 categories together, take 1 category out. I want to see only centers. Right, I added in wingers there. My apologies. 1, 2, 3, 4. My AHL is 1, 2, 3, 4. Who's my excess? Really cool to look at it this way, I think, in my opinion. Who are my UFAs, RFAs, unsigned? If you want to look at all for the UFAs, this is probably a better way to look at it when it comes time for figuring out who needs to be re-signed, who can be allowed to walk to free agency and whatnot. And that'll lead right into the next tab here on the menu, which is free agency. Now, when you start your franchise mode in year 1, there's going to be some guys out here who are already retired in the real world, like Kevin Shattenkirk, let's say. And they're higher overall guys too, like Giordano, Shattenkirk, Johnson, Schultz. These are all 81 plus overall guys. They could definitely be slotted into your lineup right away. And if for whatever reason, let's say, okay, Kevin Shattenkirk, he retired. I don't want him to be here. I forgot to take him out of my save file, but now he's here. What do I do? Here's what you got to do to kind of tank his overall so that he retires next year and no one signs him for this year. So first things first, go down to your settings, click on roster, then switch on in-game roster editor. Allows the editing of player attributes during a career. Back out, go to roster, go to player editor, go to free agents. A few hoops to go through, but it's at least it's simple enough in my opinion. Go to Kevin Shattenkirk, and now I can edit. So let me bring down everything, not just one thing. This big plus and minus brings down everything. Let me bring down everything. As you can see, his main overall, let's say it's down to 60 now. Keep on going. Let's bring him down to a 48 overall. I press update. I go back to free agency. The player has been updated. I go to free agency. Kevin Shattenkirk, no longer here. He's been tanked in overall. No one will sign him, and he'll retire next year. That's one way you can change a player for that reason. Or you can improve a player for whatever reason at any time that you like. That's the beauty of the customizability of it all. So that's how you do it. Let's say if you found somebody who shouldn't be there in free agency. But while we're still talking about free agency, you can sort by a ton of cool things here. Aside from just positions, all the centers, all the right wings. Look at this. You can sort by, let's say who are the players who played for Colorado? Well, Darren Helm played for Colorado. Rocco Grimaldi played for Colorado. Maybe he wants to come back here, storyline purposes. That's really cool. What about people who had Colorado as their childhood team, aka who grew up in Colorado? So you got Cal Foote, of course, that makes sense. His father, Adam Foote. Then not much else from there. And what about guys who had a family member play for the Avalanche? Or who are currently playing for the Avalanche too. Taylor Makar, I didn't even know this guy existed. So Taylor Makar is out there, related to Cale Makar. Do I want to bring him in and have the brothers play together on a deep pairing? That would be something. Because over in the lineup, you can also do it this way. If I click on Cale Makar, it'll also show me, if I click on his, it's not going to be over here. It's going to be, maybe if I go in contracts, Cale Makar, view profile, let's say, I see, brother Taylor Makar. I had no idea. So that's a great way to just go down the family tree for a second. He was drafted 7th round, 220th overall by the Avalanche in 2021. I had no clue. Okay, so Taylor Makar, there he is. And while we're talking about that, if I went over and looked at Alex Ovechkin, as I told you earlier, with his sons, because the custom roster has added them in, I can see he has a son Ilya Ovechkin and Sergei Ovechkin, and Ilya Ovechkin is currently slated to go in the 2038 draft. How crazy is that? How about Sergei Ovechkin, currently slated to go in the 2036 draft? Crazy. Those are just for people who are, those are children who are super young. Guys who are currently out here, like Taylor Makar, I can find him through that way, add him, put them on a D line, a D pairing together. Crazy. I love that. So that's free agency. Not much else to say there. You choose a player, you send them a contract offer. The more you give them, the more they're interested. The more clauses you give, the more they'd be interested and would be able to take less money as well because you've given them the security of a no move or no trade clause. It's pretty simple in that way, same as the contract extensions we were just talking about. So there are the contracts and the free agency elements of HLM. So we've gone through the lineups, the trades, a lot of the main managerial things. Now we move on to prospects. This is a big one now, but probably not as big in terms of the time you have to dedicate to as you would think, because in EA NHL franchise mode, if you want to fully scout a draft class, it's going to take you about 30 to 40 minutes per season. In HLM, that is not the case. So right now you can't do that much because scouting only starts on the 7th, I believe, if we saw. Yeah, and the 7th, today is the 1st. So before then, it's essentially just like clicking on view draft class. You can look at each player, their age, their position, height, weight, brother, family, Michael Misa, Luke Misa. You can sort by family even as well. Castles has 3 family members, Sim has 2 family members. So that's a really cool thing to be able to sort by on top of just it existing. So right now, this is just a view draft class, but if we do take a second to advance a few days, I don't want to do too much advancing yet, but if we advance to looking at the scouting, because that's when scout assignments begin, if we sim towards September 7th, so before then, World Cup, let's see, Makar, Taze, and McKinnon all going to Team Canada, Rantanen for Team Finland, that's cool. Let's keep on going. Anything between now and then? No. Okay, great. So now here we are at the draft, not the draft, at the scouting assignment. So go to scouting staff. So viewing prospects is not going to be able to do anything for me. I'll have to go to the actual staff screen. So this is kind of in tandem between the prospect screen and the staff screen. They work together. So I think I'll put this as one kind of timestamp. So from the prospects, that's just viewing the draft class. But going to the staff, here I see my overview, which shows me everything in one place. But I can then click and look at it a bit more closely as my coaches, my scouts, and my medical. So while we're on the subject of prospects, I'll look at the scouts first. My head scout is Eric Daze, and as you can see, oh look, here's Henrik Zetterberg, here's Eddie Lack. Former players will be in your staff, whether it be your coaches, your medical, whatever, if you have one of these rosters downloaded. And in the future, even if you don't have one of these rosters downloaded, if you're just playing the base version, after your players retire in year 1, they could be in your staff in year 2 if you go and hire them from the hire staff screen. But for right now, we're looking at our scouts. Let's say I click on my head scout and I say, okay, I can view your profile first. So that's just clicking on him, seeing whatever his history is. I can also go ahead and click on assign prospects, fire, or promote. I can't really promote him anymore because he's already the head scout. And if I click on him and look at his profile, I see that he has kind of like an X factor. He has a specialty. This is active right now. Gem 2 increases the discovery of gems by 10%. So if it's gold, it would be 15. If it was one more, it would be 20. But he's right here at the silver. That's why he's my head scout. He increases the discovery of gems by 10%. That's awesome. He's rated Canada and US as a scale of 1 to 20. He's great in Canada and US both at 14. Rest of the world 12, but Sweden, Finland, Russia all at 10. So I probably wouldn't put him there. And I wouldn't transfer him to my coaching or to my medical because he doesn't have high attributes there either. He could maybe go in development with 6 out of 20, but why would I put him there when he's already having such high scouting attributes? So I could assign the prospects myself. Assign prospects, I click on it right here and start clicking on prospects. All right, assign him Misa, Marton, Denoyer, Gavin. I can assign him all those guys. I can select up to 15 prospects, and it's not by the league, it's by the nationality. So these are Canadian prospects in different leagues. Canada, his level's 14. I can do up to 15 prospects at a time. I could switch him to US, where he's also 14. I could switch him to Finland, where he's 10. It's up to me. Now, I could do that for each of my scouts. I do have a fair number of scouts, and I'd have to reassign that scout after the scouting report is finished each time. Or I could just press auto assign. Now in EA NHL, auto assign gives you junk. It's not worth it. I'd rather spend 30 minutes and get it right than have it go auto and I get absolutely nothing. But here, the auto assign actually works quite well because you're just assigning the scout to the prospect. It's not a ton of, okay, play style, strengths and weaknesses, potential and comparison. No, you're just assigning the scout to the prospects. So right away, it tells me, okay, Daze is good in Canada. They gave him 15 Canadian prospects. Lucenius is good in Finland with 14. He got 10 prospects from Finland. So it already gives the scout their strength. It's not doing random things like sending Lucenius to Russia, where it's a lower grade. That's the good part about the auto assign. So honestly, I have no problem with auto assigning. The bigger thing you want to be in control of is making sure that you're hiring the right people. Like right now down here, I don't know, like Yakimov is scouting in the US and he's ranked 5 in the US. That's already because I have enough people in Russia, I suppose. So if I need my US prospects to be scouted, I'd rather fire Yakimov, Bogdan Yakimov. I'll fire him, go to hire staff in the top right corner. Sadly, it looks like I don't have a lot of budget, but if I sort by USA, and for people who want to sign with a contender, because look, one guy wants to sign with a contender, one wants a pretender, one wants a rebuilding. Is this Chris Osgood? Amazing. All right, so if I go to ones who want to be with a contender and who are good in the US, comes down to a couple of these guys. If I don't think about it too deeply, let's look at Sutter. Who's this? Ron Sutter. Amazing. So what kind of offer do I give him? 6 years, 5 years. His role as scout. He has the learner. specialty. So reduces the cost of a specialty by 5% when you're adding the specialty. So, okay, let me send that offer to him. Offer declined. Yeah, so I don't have the money for him. That's the problem. Yeah, but if I did have the budget, it would be easy to sign him and then just, again, auto-assign, and then he'd be good to go. So that's, in theory, what you would do. But right now, my team is over the budget, so I can't sign anybody else. But it's a simple enough thing in theory. Now, those are the scouts, and they'll be assigned to your prospects, to the prospects who are available. And as they're uncovered, you'll learn more. And this area of the screen will be filled in. Rankings will change, of course, as they go on in the course of the season as well. Who jumps 5 spots, 20 spots, who drops 10 spots, and so on. And as it says on HLM's website, you can send a maximum of 3 scouts in each of the 6 regions, who then scout a maximum of 15 prospects at a time. Furthermore, when a scout observes prospects, their information is unlocked. The more knowledgeable a scout is in a region, the more information you will get. The more a scout spends time in a region, the better his skills in the region will be. There are 5 levels of information for prospects, and for each tier reached, you get more information about the prospect. You can choose which region a scout is in and which prospect he is observing, as we just said, or you can do it automatically with the auto assign button. So that's for the scouts. Now, if I look at my coaches, it's the same thing. Jared Bednar, my head coach, if I click on him, I can look at all the specialties that he brings to the table as well. I have his picture there. Communicator 2 increases the effective attributes by 2.5%. He has Clutch 1, team's performance during the playoffs, by 1.25%. And he also has Reputation, interest of free agents assigned by 5% raise. That's awesome. So he has a lot of really good things going for him. When speaking about specialties, as you can see, if my coach has a bunch of them, I can only have 2 set at a time, 2 out of 2 right now. I can set active specialties once per season. I could swap out, let's say, Clutch for Reputation if I want to have that one active, but I would have to set that just once a year. And looking at the specialty tree, let's say he has Clutch 1, I want him to get to Clutch 2. He has Communicator 2, I want him to get to Communicator 3. It costs XP to do so. So if I want Clutch 1 to be upgraded, it would cost 1,925 XP, but as you can see in the bottom right corner, I have 0 XP. Of the whole game, this might be where I'm rustiest because I never really touched these upgrades, but I believe, unless I'm mistaken, someone please correct me, that XP is just gained over time as you win games, win playoff rounds, etc. As you're a successful team, XP will be gained, and you use that XP to build on these specialties, to either add them or just upgrade them, for whether it be for your head coach, your head physio, whoever you want to give it to. I believe it's simple enough to gain, especially if you're having a successful team over multiple seasons. And when I look at my entire coaching staff in the NHL, I'm in the positives for offense, and this is what's really interesting. I don't have to think, okay, there's one guy weighing it down. I can look at everybody's collective ratings. Altogether, my goaltending is -1.3, which makes sense for the Avalanche. My offense and defense are in the positives. My power play, penalty kill, and development are all in the positives. But in theory, I'd probably fire Nolan Pratt and then hire someone who's a little better at goaltenders. Again, I can't speak for all the little nuances, like what's the difference between -1 and -1.5, but in my experience, if it's -1 or more, I think you're going to notice it. So I'd try to get it, like -0.5 is not going to be the end of the world, but -1.3, yeah, that is a little bit much for me. So I would fire Nolan Pratt. I'd fire him. Now I have more room in my budget for sure, down to 7. I couldn't sign anyone too, now it's at -2. I can't hire anyone too costly. But if I look at coaches who want to sign with a contender, who have good goalie ratings, and then now I have to consider my budget. Maybe, is this Dale Weiss? There we go, Dale Weiss. We'll try to sign Dale Weiss, 3 years at 0.277. Let's sign. There we go. Offer accepted. Now I go back, I look at my coaches. Dale Weiss is on the staff, 13 for goaltending. So that brought it from -1.3 to -0.8. Still not amazing, but it's better. So that's a great way that you can take a little bit of control over your coaching staff and see what really means what for where. Not having to guess, what does this attribute mean? Does my assistant coach's power play rating mean anything? No, this actually tells you what means what, and what does it mean for the big picture of things. That's for the NHL. For the AHL, same story. And for the ECHL, exact same story as well. So I love that control that you have. Paul Holmgren is here, head of player development, really? And then over in the medical, same thing, like Mike Smith. Like, it's not always going to be players who are actually physios, right? Like Mike Smith didn't retire and then become a physio. But here he is, Mike Smith. If I view his profile, that is the Mike Smith, the goaltender. I have the history of his contracts. I see that he has Mentor 1. He also has Rehabilitation 1. Great. He is my head physio. 19 for recovery and 13 for prevention. Cool. I also have another 3 physios behind him. So those are my coaches, my scouts, and my medical, what it means for which attributes and what I'm trying to get. I didn't mention this for the scouts, but I'll just throw it in there. If you're looking for efficacy in areas, I'm probably in that, like, use the colors. 12, 13 plus range is good. 12 and lower, not at, even 12 Z, but really when you get into the 10s where it's yellow, think about the colors, right? Dark red, light red, then like orangey, yellow, green, blue, all of that. Think about that for the color system, for overalls, for chemistry, for everything. And then with the overview of it all, here are my directors, my scouts, my coaches, my medical staff, everybody here in one place. I can click on them, look at their profiles a little bit more easily. Furthermore, as it says on HLM's website, coaches allow you to improve certain aspects of your team, such as offense, defense, power play, penalty kill, goaltending, and player development, as each coach has a rating from E to A+ in each of his categories. They also have a preferred style of play, offensive, balanced, defensive, a preferred team type, contender, pretender, rebuilding, and a preferred role, head coach, assistant coach, minor head coach. The style of play, the type of team, and the role are taken into account when negotiating a contract. These 3 values define the match between the coach and the team. The higher the match, the easier it will be to recruit the coach. Coaches can also improve when the match is over 85%, and that lowers down to 70% when the coach is a former player. Good to keep in mind. You can have a maximum of 4 coaches, as we just said, 3 in the NHL major team and 1 in your AHL minor team. Let's try and fly through this a little bit more. This is a very, very long video for good reason, but it doesn't have to be crazy long. For injured reserve, I can see my players who are currently injured, what's the severity of their injury. Tucker Pullman's out for another 736 days, major injury. If you have a guy whose career is over, like a Carey Price, you'll see that it's like 4,000 plus days. So in theory, he'll be healthy in 4,000 days, which is like 12 years, but by then he'll be retired. Lekanen, Nichushkin, you can click on the player, see their profile, and it'll tell you again over here, it's a head injury. This is the bar. It's 5 out of 75 days healed. There are 70 days left until he's good to go. It also tells you things like milestones. We'll get into that later, but on the player's profile, you can see their milestones, like where they stand in franchise history, their all-time stats for the season, for the playoffs, for international. It's crazy how much you can look at. Their contract history, their injury history. I am just blown away by this game every single like 3 minutes. So that's the injury reserve. You can also look at the history, which of course is not extensive right now, but after the multiple months and even seasons, you'll see that. And a summary in one place. You can look at it like that as well. Injured reserve. Depth chart is very good. It's not going to be like MLB The Show where it shows you like in 5 years from now what things would look like, but just in one place to say, okay, where am I lacking? Okay, I need more right wingers on this team. I need more right Ds on this team. Preseason right now, so it's a little bit weird because all my AHL guys are called up, but then you can see my AHL depth, my ECHL depth, exact same thing. You can look at stats as well. You can look at the same depth chart, but with different numbers being presented to you. Contract status, potential, and ratings. So the potential, as we already said with the colors, exact same thing. But I'll hold off for a moment because now we're going to look at player development. So I'll get into that when we get into this screen, I think. In player development, well, actually, training is locked until the beginning of the season, October 13th. So you know what? Maybe we should simulate up until then, and then we can get started on that. So September 7th, I have to go through the preseason. You know what? I'm going to come back to that. We'll come back to player development and training as soon as the preseason is over. So let's hop over to player development for just a second. We'll go to numbers. We already spoke a little bit about the ability to retire numbers and stuff like that in the team edit part of things before you begin your save file. But you can look at all the numbers on your team. You can change them up for whatever you want. Nathan McKinnon, number 29, I want to change him to whatever other number, which ones are taken, which ones are retired. I can even look at just the retired numbers, Sakic, Forsberg, Hayduk, Gretzky, all that. Even look at other teams. I want to see the retired numbers or just the regular numbers of anyone on the Dallas Stars. It shows me that. Thank you very much. So that's a nice way to just take a little peek at numbers or retired numbers and captaincies as well. I can remove the captaincy of somebody like Nichushkin. I want to remove his alternate captaincy and I'll add it for whatever, Josh Manson. Give it to him, no problem. Exact same story if I go in the top right corner, I swap for the AHL. I can play with the numbers here or the captaincies at the same time. So that's for jersey numbers, pretty self-explanatory. Off to waivers, nothing here yet, but players will be put on waivers as the season gets going. I'll see who the new players are. Remember we said earlier in the settings, maybe I could say that I only want to be notified of players who are 83 overall plus, but then I go and check and there's a player who's 82. So it might be a good idea to keep an eye on the waivers depending on your settings, but if you have them for everybody, you'll always be notified. Tournaments, not much to see here because no tournaments are going on, but the World Cup and the World Juniors will be happening at their respective times. So nothing set for for the World Cup just yet, but the World Juniors will start on December 26th. Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, group D tells you all kinds of stuff, everything that you want to know. Crazy. Now, moving finally to team standings. Nothing to see here yet, but you can see it with the wild card, division, or the entire league. You have 3 options, and of course, you can switch between the leagues right here. And the more leagues you have active, the more you can check out. I want to see the KHL standings? No problem. They'll bring it to you right here. So that's why it might be fun to have as many active as you want if you're curious about seeing what's going on around the world. But if you're really just worried about the NHL, then just keep it NHL, AHL, ECHL. Player stats, same thing, nothing yet. Honors, this is like the same as the awards screen. Stanley Cup, Prince of Wales, all that for the team awards. For the player awards, there's a few more than the real world NHL. Hart, Conn Smythe, Art Ross, Calder, Morris Rocket Richard. There's the Adam Oates Trophy, which is given to the player who is the best playmaker, the most assists. There's also the Paul Coffey Trophy for the best offensive defenseman, while the James Norris is now best for the best defensive defenseman. So the defenseman with the best Corsi percentage wins the James Norris, and the forward with the best Corsi percentage wins the Frank J. Selke Trophy. I would, of course, assume that there's some sort of minimum number of games played that there would have to be, but I don't know what that is in the background. Vezina, World Cup MVP, World Juniors MVP, Jack Adams Award, and of course you have the history of it as well. If you press view more, maybe not for World Series MVP, maybe view more for James Norris, you can scroll through all the years, view more, you can scroll all the way down, and you can see the stats they had that season. Crazy. While NHL and EA World, we get 5 years and then it's gone forever. So all the history of the awards are there. You can also look in the top left corner and click on Hall of Fame. You can see all the current Hall of Famers, what the class of 2024 was. So Datsuk, Roenick, and Weber just got inducted. And then when it comes time at the end, closer to the end of this video, you'll see how you can nominate players for the class of 2025. So these are the members of the Hall of Fame who are currently there. Not the nominees, not who could be coming, not possible inductees. These are all players who are in the Hall of Fame, skaters and goalies. So you can see there's 197 skaters in the NHL, in the Hockey Hall of Fame. That's for honors. Then for league, going here, it just shows you, these are all the league records. So the honors is for all the award and Hall of Fame history, while the league tab is for all of the other records around the NHL history, franchise history, and things like that. So games played, goals, assists, penalty minutes, etc. for all-time records. That's looking at all of them. And then you can sort by forwards, defense, or goalies. And all these numbers up here are for NHL history. But for these records down here, this is just for the duration of your franchise save, whether it be 2 years or 200 years. These records down here, from most team wins down to most shutouts, are just for, whether it be teams, games, or players, your franchise save. These up here are for NHL history. So this is currently all players for all-time season records. If I just want to see playoff records, then I can do it like that. If I want to just see active players who have the most playoff goals, like Jaromir Jagr, technically still active as well, playing in Kladno, so he would still be considered an active player. If I want to see just for which league, click on the league tab will allow me to click on the team. Just for Edmonton Oilers, active players for their playoff records, you can sort by a lot of different things here. And furthermore, you can then go to Milestones. The Milestones will tell you which players are the closest to getting to whatever threshold. JT Miller has played 799 games, so he's 1 away from the 800 game milestone. Yarncrow 700, Trennan 300, goals, Jordan Eberle 1 more for 300, Malkin 2 more for 500, and so on and so forth for shutouts, games played, league milestones, franchise milestones. Crazy. Then you have, after that, rankings. So team rankings, this is a very interesting screen as well. Don't be fooled by just thinking, okay, it's power rankings or something. No, there's team ranking, of course, but there's also trade power. Trade power assigns your team a number based on the prospects you have, the draft picks you have, the high value roster players that you have. It all comes out to one big number. So the Chicago Blackhawks, between Bedard, Jones, Nazar, Korchinski, their picks, whatever, have this number of 32,886. That number gives them the most trade power if all of their pieces had a number in the National Hockey League. While St. Louis has the lowest at 20,532. So not that St. Louis is a poverty team, but if I were to think what team would give me the most challenge in a franchise save, probably the Blues, the Islanders, the Senators. Those would be hard teams to take over because not only are they in difficult spots, but they have very little trade value to play with no matter what they want to do. So trade power is a cool screen to look at. Prospect pool as well. Who are the top prospects prospects and what are the best prospect systems. So San Jose has Celebrini, Dickinson, and Smith as 1, 2, and 3, plus the best system overall. While at the bottom, you have the Bruins, Letourneau, Lysell, and Hendrickson ranked as their 1, 2, and 3. So you got team ranking, trade power, prospect pool, prospect ranking in the entire league. Who are the top 50 prospects in the NHL, regardless of team? Just who are the top 50? I like this a lot as well. So of course, we'll try and have as many in the top 50 here as possible for your prospect pool. Award ranking, who's won the most awards of the active players in the league. McDavid at 21 right now, leads all players. Stanley Cup rankings, who has won the most cups of all the active players as well. So Crosby, Malkin, Letang, all these guys with 3 cups up there at the top. And then down, estimated career earnings. This one I believe is only within your save file. Yeah, so right now it would be zeros for everybody, but as the years go on, that would start to add up. So all that to say, I love the ranking screen. You get that in the league tab, and then clicking on ranking in the top left corner. Finally, there's also draft history. The draft history will only show me, because I'm using this custom roster, the draft order of players who are still active. What do I mean by that? Let me show you an example. Let's say I scroll back all the way to 1990. You see 1990, 91, 92, they're still active players, but then from 93 to 98, there's nobody, so I'm not able to access those draft years. I can't see the whole class, but if I go to 1990, I can see Jaromir Jagr drafted 5th overall. If I go to 1991, I can see Stumpel drafted 40th overall. He's still active somewhere, I suppose. Then if I go to like 2010, of course, I can see a lot more, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because all these guys are still active in the league. So I haven't gone far enough to wonder, like, would 2024 disappear eventually if I went to the year 2100? I suppose so, but I think it might be just because those are imported. Once I start the 2025 draft and then go from there, because it's part of this save file, not anything that I imported through rosters, I think those are saved forever. Again, I've never gone like 50 years in the future, so I can't say for sure, but either way, this is where you see the draft class history. So records, milestones, rankings, draft history. This league tab is your best friend when it comes to storyline development. Love this. And then of course there's search. You could do it always in the top right corner if you're just searching for a name, but if you're searching for a certain player, I want one player who comes from Belgium. Actually, are there any players who come from Belgium? There's one. I got this guy Peters. So you can sort by nationality, position, potential, motivation, drafted round, and then of course comes into attributes over here. You can clear everything if you're getting a bit too crazy, and then click search when you're ready to go. I've been talking a few times about this potential and even the word motivation. What does it all mean? Well, if we go over to HLM's website, they have that and a few other elements of the game explained here on their site. So if you ever wanted to see it in like a written format, this would be the place to go, as it's very helpful. So for potentials and motivations, the overall assigned to potentials is very similar to the EA NHL world, where a franchise player is 93 to 99 in overall, elite players are 88 to 92, top 6 forwards, top 4D, and starting goalies are 85 to 87. Top 9 forwards, top 6D, and low starters are 82 to 84. And low starter being like a fringe starter. 4th line, 7th D, backup goalies are 78 to 81, depth are 75 to 77, and minor league guys are 75, less than 75 overall. Motivation is the color under the player's potential, and it represents the chance that he reaches that potential. So exact potential for players who are 27 or older means the player won't grow anymore, it's gray. Blue potential means absolute, it's a 95% chance. High is green, 90%. Yellow is medium, 65%. Low is red, 25%. And poor is dark red, crimson at 10%. So there's big jumps here from 10 to 25 to 65, then up to 90, and that little extra to 95. So green is not like pretty good and blue is amazing. Green is very, very good, and blue is that very, very good plus a little bit more. So you definitely want blue or green. You don't got to go crazy over needing the blue, because green is still very good, but of course blue is best. Potential can also change throughout the years. Some players are overrated or underrated when they are drafted, and as they age, their true potential is revealed. Ice time, coaching staff, and performance do not affect potential. The final overall value of a player can vary based on 3 factors: ice time, coaching staff development rating, and performance. So playing a major player, aka an NHL player, who's above 80 overall in the minor league, or vice versa, a minor player in the major league, so NHL and AHL, or AHL in NHL, for an extended period of time will lower his overall. So you have to be careful of what a player's overall is and what league they should be in. And finally, having a coaching staff with a bad development rating will lower the overall of young players. So even if you don't go into doing like the specialty trait trees and all that, just make sure that you have the right coaches on your staff. Okay, so I think that's about it for the tabs down the side here. My goodness, what a video this is going to be. If you click on tutorial, it'll pop up that website that I've been reading from HLM. So that's a great way to get access to their website, which has some helpful tips for you. Also links to where to email them, where to reach out to them, whether it be on X, Reddit, whatever. Roster, as we said, if you want to go edit a player, this is where you'd come. Player editor, team editor, league editor, and prospect creator. So if you want to create your own prospects for later in the draft for in future years, add whatever name you want. You can add, let's see, Elam Garrick. Shout out to anyone who gets the reference. I say his birth date is, actually, let me go here. Let's say January of 2023. I want him to be draft eligible for 2041, whatever it might be. I add whatever other details I like, and I press, actually some fields are incomplete. These all have to be done, my apologies. Okay, now can I create him? There you go. Elam Garrick is created for the 2041 draft class. Beautiful. So that's prospect creator right there at any point in the mode. Doesn't matter that your roster has already been set for the save file. You can still add to it. That's another incredible piece about it. Your settings, all the stuff that we looked at earlier, a lot of things are still changeable, including like major things. Like if I want to say, okay, I'm tired of staff salary cap, I can go turn it off now. I don't have to be locked in by the settings that I did back on day one. Also, don't forget to save your file down here in the bottom left corner. Very easy to do. Just hit the save button, saving in progress, then it's good to go. You can change the setting for different auto saves, like we said, every month, every 3 months, but just hitting save every once in a while is very easy to do, so I'd recommend doing that as well. The last thing we haven't really done is go through a season as well as get to the player development. The training can't be done till the start of the season. So if I say let's sim through the preseason, get to the start of the year, we'll end off this guide. I say end, there's still a lot more to go, but we'll end it off by going through the actual course of a season. It's that time of the season, go to your scouting staff or auto assign. If I just press auto assign, that's no problem. You'll see the speed as well is quite fast. Pajot, 1/3 and 2/3 for Olesen. I will dismiss that. No, thank you. And the simulation goes quite quickly. There's a lot of pop-ups at the beginning. Preseason kickoff. We're thrilled to announce the commencement of the season. Go to rosters or lineups. No, we're good to go. Calvin DeHaan to miss 4 months due to injury. Oof, that's tough. So let's best lines that. Oh boy. Best lines that out for 2 weeks. So now a bunch of players going on waivers. So now here's my notification of the league telling me, all right, Husso, Jones, Forbert, all these guys are on waivers. If I want to claim them, I go to waivers, which I can click on right here, and I click on the player, and all I gotta do is press claim. That's all I have to do. So keep that in mind. It's very simple, but the way that you're notified is going to be up to how you make your settings. Then here's the report, who cleared, who was claimed, and now who's on waivers. Now that the Oilers claimed Husso, they put Pickard on waivers. Sweden wins the 2024 World Cup. How about that? How did my players do? McKinnon had 12 points in 7 games, all that, blah, blah, blah. I can go to the tournament and even see more details. Last 5 games, I can see what happened right here. Last 10, here's my record, here's our position. Goals, assists, and points leaders. New names on the waiver wire, thank you. And now the season is starting, and here are the rookies who are out there. So I can go to training or auto-assign the training. If I want to assign the training myself, again, auto-assigning wouldn't be bad at all, but if it's something you really want a certain player to work on, going ahead and doing it on your own is not bad either. Just take a few more minutes to get that done. So if I click on Cale Makar, actually I don't need to do that, but just by the way, it shows me all his awards history. He won the bronze medal in the World Cup here in September of 2024. It shows me so much about him, his milestones, his development, just so many good things about the player profile that I love going to. Now, if I want to say, okay, head player development person, Paul Holmgren, I want him to be working on Cale Makar. Now, do I want Cale Makar to be working on his secondary position, becoming a left defenseman? Do I want to transform him? And how many days will it take? It'll take 302 days. Do I want to transform him into a defensive defenseman or a two-way D? It's going to take 453 days. Or do I want to improve his ratings in one of these different categories? All of them would take like between 5 and 800 days because he's already so good. So that wouldn't be super easy. So if I said, how about someone who's like a bit more malleable? Like how about an Olesen? Let's say I want to work on him. Yeah, 83 days to work on his shooting, much more reasonable. 80 days to work on his passing, easy. So I can go through each player and give them one thing to work on over the course of the next 80 days, 100 days, whatever. Or I could just press auto assign right here. It doesn't lock anything in. I can still go and change it. But I can say, okay, so Guliev and whoever else is being worked on by these different coaches for different attributes attributes and parts of their game. And I might want to change some of those. Like Dale Weiss, why are you working on Cale Makar becoming a lefty? It's going to take you like close to 2 years. And thank you for telling me the completion date. I have 453 days. I don't need to guess. It's going to be December of 2026. We're in October of 2024. So if I say, hold on, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let's, pause the training, pause, aka remove, and we'll do something else. If I press auto assign again, it'll do something else. So maybe just let's roll the dice again. Now it's Kovalenko who goes there with Dale Weiss. Okay, much more manageable. And if I look at the HLM website one more time, here's some more good explanations. The staff of a team can train players to help them improve more quickly in specific aspects of their game. Here are the roles that can train players. The head of player development with 3 slots, the head coach with 2 slots, and assistant coach with 1 slot. The head of player development can train any players within the organization. Other roles can only train players in their respective leagues. So NHL head coach for NHL players, head of player development for anybody. And the types of training, so secondary position, so adding a secondary position to their to what their main position is, their primary position. Player type, this training allows a player to change their player type. Why would you want to do that? More for, like we were talking about earlier with line chemistries and stuff like that. Maybe a defensive defenseman into a two-way D to help out the chemistry in that way a little bit. Why would I want to do that? Well, for example, like here's a tip that just comes from playing. Two-way forwards, even the best two-way forwards, just don't really produce offense. I get the best defensive defensemen don't score very much, but the best two-way forwards can still score. So changing a two-way forward who's not scoring into a playmaker, a sniper, a power forward, whatever, might be a good strategy for when you have high overall players that just don't seem to be performing. That's when I'd want to change their player type, even if it takes a year and a half. Ratings as well, you can also change. This training improves one of a player's attributes by 1, +1 being that. These training options are only available for players who do not have an exact motivation, aka the color of their potential, so players who are 26 or younger. A player's training can be paused, however, progress will be lost if the player starts another training program. So if I press pause on Makar becoming a left D and then train somebody else, that's fine. But if I press pause on Makar becoming a left D and then start training him for, I guess, his shooting, I would lose the progress that was being made towards turning him into a left D. Training is only available during the season and preseason, not the postseason or the off-season. The duration of training is calculated based on several factors. The player's age, younger the player, faster it goes. Their potential, higher the potential, faster the training. The difference between their current overall and the potential overall. So the greater the difference, the faster the training. If they're a 50 and their potential is 98, well, then it's going to go very quickly. Attribute value, the training for a player with a shooting attribute of 90 will take much longer than for an attribute of 60. So if they already have 90, like we just saw with Cale Makar, it's going to take long for him to get to 91. If it's 60, it'll be very quick to get him to 70 or whatever else the number might be. Number of completed trainings. The more training sessions completed, the slower the progress, I guess, taxing on the body. And the coach's attributes. These also affect the training duration. So you want to have high attributes for your coaches. Here's an example of training duration for an 18-year-old defenseman with high top 4 potential and an overall rating of 70. Secondary position would take 6 months, player type 9 months, but his rating about 4 months because of his potential, his age, and the difference between his current overall of 70 and the overall that he would be as a high top 4, which as we saw before is in like whatever mid to high 80 range. For development focus, the development focus allows you to determine which aspect of their game a player should concentrate on. When a player focuses on a particular aspect, other areas of their game will improve more slowly than usual. So there are several types of focus. So let's say if we do balance, all the player's attributes will improve equally. If it's for offense, the offensive attributes will be prioritized, so the player's defensive game will develop more slowly. Same thing for defense, shooting, passing, offensive and defensive awareness, and shot blocking. Now finally, development trend. The development trend indicates how optimal the development environment is for a player. This trend affects the speed at which a player develops. So an example, if it's a blue upward arrow, it is outstanding and the player will improve much faster than expected this season. Green, excelling, faster than expected. Yellow, normal, as expected. Red, slow, less than expected, and the impact on their long-term development will be minimal. Crimson, dark red, but still going up, is very slow. It will be very much less than expected this season, and the impact will be noticeable on their long-term development. While that red arrow pointing straight will mean that no improvement is happening this season, and the impact on their long-term development will be significant. You don't want to see that. The development environment is influenced by several factors. To finish it off here, quality of competition, the caliber of the league in which the player competes. That's what we just said before about NHL and the AHL and vice versa. If a player is in a league that is too strong or weak, then it will negatively impact their development trend. Number of games played. If a player spends half the season on the bench, then of course that will negatively impact their development trend. Number of playoff games played. The more playoff games that a player participates in, the more positively it affects their development trend. Number of games missed due to injury, self-explanatory, and of course the player's production, self-explanatory. Therefore, it is important to place young players in appropriate leagues to optimize their development. Whew, all that to say, back at this screen, that just you want to be mindful of who's getting trained and for what over certain durations. So I can look at the development, I can see this, and the player screen, I can see the trend arrows, as we just said before. So, like for example, on Olesen, with this red arrow right now, we just saw before that it's going to be slower than expected, and it's going to hurt a little bit on his long-term development as a player. Is that the end of the world? No, but you'll want to be aware of it so that you can address it before it becomes too late and really hurts them in the long term. Olesen, I see, is getting already trained here by the head coach, so that should be helpful for him. And I wonder if by the next season that he'd be at like a yellow or a green uptrending arrow instead. And finally, stats. I can see all my team stats here. Season, playoffs, last 5 games even. Oh, that's interesting. For the stats if I go to the player development. So I would say you can probably auto-assign those, but still check them because there could be some weird ones, like how Dale Weiss was training Cale Makar to be a left defenseman. The scouting, you can really set it and forget it. For the coaching, I would set it and then still take a peek at it later. I see something in my inbox here. What do we got? Waiver wire update. So tons of different things. The Flyers had sent me a trade offer, blah, blah, blah. But the waiver wire update here is one of the more primary things that I have a little notification badge for. So back to the calendar. Now going through a season sim, since everything is set, this is going to be the fastest part probably. We can just fly through the season itself. Over the course of the season, yes, of course. So at the very beginning, if you press best lines, it's not going to be able to work out because it's not that your lines are invalid, it's that your roster is invalid. And you can press best lines, but you can't press best roster, unfortunately. So at the start of the season, after the preseason, you go to edit lines. You want to click on roster moves right here, and then click on extra players, and all these guys here who are the extras down here in your lineup, all 16 players will be moved down to the AHL. Now, it will tell you some are waiver eligible. Be careful of that. Look at these green upward arrows. Love that. So these guys are going to be waiver eligible. Got to be careful about that. So I will confirm that I'm willing to send these guys through waivers. No problem. They will now be sent down to Colorado. And if they were now invalid as well, Colorado, I have to send more down to Utah. It depends on what's going on in your team. Be careful. There could be a trickle down where some go from the Avalanche to the Eagles, then from the Eagles to the Grizzlies. All right. So that starts things off. Now I can back out from here, and when I press simulate to a certain day, I should be able to just press best lines for the Eagles. There we go, and we're fine to start simulating. And things, of course, there's gonna be pop-ups because I have everything set to notify me. There'll be a lot of pop-ups, but the speed of simulation will continue to be very quick. So waiver, waivers, blah, blah, blah. But look how quick, bang, 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 bang. The days are just flying by. A breath of fresh air compared to EA NHL. If I want to sim the entirety of the season, let's go to sim the last game of the year. I'll show you an in-game sim. From here to the end of the season, last 5 games, record, goals, assists, points are always continuing to change as time goes on. I'll hop in and show you things as they pop up that are important as the season simulates on. Here's one thing that pops up over the course of the season. The training for Ishimnikov has come to an end. So if I go to player development and I say, hey, how'd that go for you? Now it's an empty spot for Holmgren. And +2 for Ambrosio right now. Progression recap. Most improved +2 for him. Most regressed Dahan at a -2. Again, if I go to players. So as the season has gone on, we see Cal Ritchie now has the red upward trend. That's going to hurt his future development. But Olesen, yes, he went from the yellow upward trend down the green upward trend. So that's good for him. Ishimnikov. So yeah, currently with the red. What? I just gave you all that focus on the passing and everything. Oh man. Okay, so if I press auto assign now, it gives me Ishimnikov again for this, but maybe Ishimnikov, I won't feel like developing you anymore. You've been disrespecting me. I could change that if I would like, but I don't really care right now. And at this point, while I'm paused, I can see, the inbox has 7 things to notify me about. The big ones that are unread, I can just sort by those even. Or the draft preview in November. Great. James Hagen's up 3 spots. Michael Misa down 2 spots. So he was ranked number 1. Now he's at number 3. Frondell down a couple spots as well. As you can see, he's playing with Guelph, which is where he's not actually playing in the real world, playing over in Sweden. Roger McQueen up 22 spots. Lewandowski up 28 spots. Okay. prospect reports, waiver wire updates, recent surges in performance by Ivan, Ranta. I'm thrilled to report that over the past month, certain players on the roster exhibited significant improvement. Their hard work and commitment are clearly paying off, and I'm eager to share the names of those who have stood out. So this is +2 to their overalls right now. Very nice. Okay, cool. Waiver wires and whatnot, all that stuff available to you throughout the course of the season. At World Junior time, I see which players from my organization have been selected. That's nice. You can click on Go to Tournament as well. Now that it's happening, okay, here's Ryan Leonard, of course, all those guys. How are my Avalanche prospects doing? Who are all of the leaders? I can advance it. I can even look at what are the specific games, sorting by country, by division, by the teams, by the stats. The level of detail here is just outstanding. I can advance a day. That's just going one day at a time while I'm in the tournament screen, or I can just exit out entirely and keep on simulating towards the end of the season. As the season goes on, I can see my record on the right side, 23, 11, and 5. Where are the standings for the Central Division? We're currently 3rd in the Central. Who's leading my team in points? What are my current injury statuses as well? That's done. Auto assign. Keep on going. There you go. Canada won the 2024 World Junior Championship. Really, did they now? 14 points from Cal Ritchie. That's nice. Goalie also in our system. There you go. Celebrate this triumph for the sport. Blah, blah, blah. Unforgettable. Blah, blah, blah. Thunderous applause and all that. Love it. You can also go to tournament and you can see more details on it. Gold medal, silver medal, bronze medal, who got promoted, who got relegated, who was the MVP of the tournament, Ivan Demidov. There you go. Love to see that. Everything you'd want to know about the tournament is there available for you. Love it. Now getting towards the end of February, March 1st, no matter what year it is, March 1st is always the trade deadline. So here we are ending off February. The game's going to be telling us in just a moment as we go through the game against Vegas. 40 wins the deadline. Wow. Sorry, actually 39 wins. My apologies. So here are the trade deadline. We can dismiss it and keep on simulating, or we can go to the trade deadline. As we set earlier, it's a 10-minute deadline that starts here in the top right corner. And right away it's telling us who are the top players available, who has matching needs, matching surpluses, recent trades. It's the hub for everything going on here at the deadline. So if I click on one of the top players available, I want Patty Kane. Already, I don't even need to go and try and configure something. I can already click find trade for Patty Kane right now. What do you want, Detroit? A 3-team deal where I get Patty Kane and you get a second and a fourth. And then Calgary retains some of the contracts, 50%, and I give them Bardakov to make it happen. So that's one of 7 offers. Or we can do this, that, always with retention with Calgary, working through them, it seems like. All right, cool. What if I want Anthony Mantha? What do I do to find a trade for him? Here's all the different options for them. More salary cap through a couple teams. They offer you the 3-team option. That's awesome. So there are the trades that could happen. This is the trade screen, the trade blocks around the league. Sorry, this is my trade block. My apologies. Then there's the depth chart, which we already saw previously, the same as the usual trade screen. Sorry, this is my trade block, and I can also look at the league's blocks by looking at league block and then scrolling through, sorting by value, by age, by overall, whatever else it might be, how many years left on the deal, what's the current cap hit, so on and so forth, even positionally. Depth chart, lineup, all those things that you could click on previously still available to you. What are the current standings in the league? What teams might I want to trade with as sellers and so forth? And what even might the watch list be, which I hadn't set yet. And that's it. So it would go for the entirety of the 10 minutes, or at any time when I'm just done, I could press exit, and then I will no longer be able to make any more trades as the final whatever minutes left get simulated and the rest of the league makes their trades. Once that is done, I can keep on simulating towards the end of the season. We'll slow sim that game against the St. Louis Blues, and then we'll get into playoffs, off-season stuff. Boy, what a video this is. I know it's super, super lengthy, and you might think, whoa, why am I ever going to play this mode with a tutorial video that's so long? But 1, no one says you have to do all these different settings, and 2, it just tells you how much is available to you. Whether you want 1% of it or 100% of it, look how much is available to you at any given moment in the career save file. So finally, we get towards the end of the year. Last game of the season here against the St. Louis Blues. We're 52-21-8. If you click on the game, you can go to play by play. It's a rivalry game here. So before I even click start, you can see all the things here. Player leaders, who are the leading goals on each side, assists on each side. What are the season records so far between these two teams? We beat them 2-1, 2-1, and they beat us 4-2. Current injuries on both sides. Goals for, goals against on the season as well. And I can click on options. I can change the speed between 0.15 times and up to 4 times speed. I can even edit my lines as well. So that can be changed throughout the game. So I can click start and it's already at the default ×1 speed that I already set. So it's minute, going through like that. 1-0 already. Something happens that I didn't like. I can just press pause, go to options, change the speed, or change my lines. I didn't like what someone just took a penalty. I didn't like that. Okay, I'm swapping Chuskin for Drouin just for this game. Okay, let's try that. I go back and now I press continue. So it just gives me a way to be able to make on the fly decisions. Now ending off the period, you don't have to click something at the end of every period to say, okay, restart again. It'll go straight from the second to the third period. This is on the main thing, right? I'm just looking at goals. If you look at play-by-play, you can see much more. The hits, the shots, takeaway, face-off win, all that stuff available, and the ongoing stats throughout the game as well. 6-2, a flurry of goals there in the third period. Final 5 minutes. Again, if you're just fed up and you want to just call it any given moment, you can just click exit as well. But 7-2, what a victory right there in a rivalry game to end off the season and give the Avalanche, what, win number, was it 52? No, 53. Whew, what a season for the Avalanche. So as you can see here, we clinched the playoffs, all is well. I can look at player leaders. I can look just on my team. I can look in the entire league too. Look at all. I can sort by points, by goals. Who are the league leaders? 55 goals from Connor McDavid. Hey, look, Connor McDavid scored 121 points. What? You mean he didn't score only 85? So another little touch on EA NHL. In the inbox, what's new over here? More draft updates, more trades of the day, more updates on who's been improving the highest. All valuable for you. Back to the office now. The season is over. I press sim to the playoffs, and it'll bring me to, okay, all the matchups. Colorado versus Nashville here in round 1. Go to playoffs, and it shows me all the different matchups around the league. So I can go to the bracket even and look at it this way if I'd like. But from this screen, I can press advanced day, 1 day at a time, or I can just back out fully and go back to my, if I want to play the games or watch the games or go in the calendar, that works too. Or just sim up to my game, that's fine. I can then do play-by-play. I can just press sim the whole game, then it shows me the details here. If I don't want to watch the whole thing happen, but I just want to have the ability to go back and look at different moments of it, I could do it like that. 6-0 win there in game 1. Lovely. I can just go to the calendar now and sim to the end of the series and see what happens there. So it doesn't go like tick, 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 but if I look at it in this screen right here, it does show me as things go on. And hey, we lose. What? So win, loss, loss, win, win. Then up 3-2, we lose game 6 and lose game 7 at home by a score of 6-3. So that's what the parity turned up. Like stuff like that can happen. It's surprising. It's not very usual either, I'd say, in HLM, but this was a surprising upset right there. Okay, so the Avalanche collapse. It seems as though it had to do with some goaltending stuff, allowing 6 goals in the final game and losing 6-5 in that game 3, 7-0. Yeah, so I'd say goaltending was certainly involved. And that now brings us to the end of our season. We can sim to the awards, which will bring us to about June whatever. Look how fast that sim is going. My goodness. Is it to June 17th? I forget exactly. And there you have it. Now they tell me everything about the end of the season. The Oilers win the Stanley Cup, marking their 6th-time victory. So their 6th ever win. Oilers win the 2025 Cup. Chicago winning in the AHL. Halifax winning the QMJHL. All the leagues that I have set as active, they will tell me the winners of that league. There you go. Thank you very much. I can then also go to playoffs. I can see what was, okay, it was Oilers versus the Maple Leafs. It was a 6-game series in the Stanley Cup final. I can look at it bracket style as well. Very good. So Nashville, the wild card team, went all the way to the Western Conference final, excuse me. Huh, how about that? Good for you, Nashville. But those are just the winners of the respective leagues. If I want to see the actual awards, I need to sim a few more days. And now at the 17th, I believe, yes, I can go and click on the awards. Now here, it's actually a fun little awards ceremony. If you don't want to do it, you can just click reveal all, but you can go through it a little bit more slowly by clicking on 2025 awards. You can see, oh, Hart Memorial Trophy. Let's reveal the finalists slowly one by one. We have Nikita Kucherov. He's won it once before. Mitch Marner, who's never won it before, 118-point season, or David Pastrnak, who's never won it before. It sounds like it's probably going to be Kucherov. Reveal the winner, and the winner is Nikita Kucherov. So this is just a really fun way to add the storyline. That's what we always want. The storyline, the storyline, the storyline. For the Conn Smythe, the winner is it McDavid? No, Leon Draisaitl. 13 goals, 15 assists, 28 points. Then you can back out if you're getting tired of that. You can just click reveal all if you'd like. And there, now you can scroll through them all one by one. So the championships of the teams, we already knew all of those. The Hart goes to Kucherov, Conn Smythe to Draisaitl, Celebrini winning the Calder, Art Ross to Kucherov, Rocket Richard to McDavid, Adam Oates Trophy to Adam Fox, Best Corsi percentage to McDavid, he wins the Selke, Best Corsi to Makar, he wins the James Norris, but the most offensive defenseman with 103 points is Adam Fox, who gets that award. Best NL World Juniors MVP, World Cup MVP, Jack Adams Award, and then the Hall of Fame, which we'll see later. That's on August 1st. So that's it for the awards. Thank you. We did that already. Now I can click on the 19th and sim towards retirement. So always awards on the 17th, always retirements on the 19th of June. Jaeger retires, Ryan Suter retires. Played for the Avalanche. Anyone who ever did, that would be Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. Félicitations, mon ami. I can go to retirements. I can look at all the players, scroll through everybody. Skaters, goalies, staff retirements as well. Reorientation. So what are these players now listed as? Justin Abdelkader is now a physio. Jamie Benn is now a coach. All that, really cool. And finally, any player who ever played for my team, whether it be 1 game or 1,000+ games, I can retire their number. Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, number 41, 41, retired forever in the history of the Colorado Avalanche. We love you, we love you, we love you. Retire number, congratulations, 41 forever there. All right, then we can move to the 22nd, which is the draft lottery. As we see in events here, salary cap is increased as well. All right, draft lottery time. We already changed the settings. As I said at the beginning, you can change the number of balls and all that. So the Flyers would have the best odds. Start the lottery at 18.5%. You can reveal it one by one, make it dramatic, or reveal all. So you can see, okay, normal number. Oh, dropped one. So someone who has the bottom here jumped. Oh my. Oh, there's a couple of jump teams. Whoa, +9 Utah up to 9 spots to 5th. Then you have LA jumping to 2nd, 6 spots, and Philadelphia keeps the number 1 spot. Oh, this was an interesting lottery. Okay, thank you very much. That's you can reveal it slowly to add to the suspense of it all. Then Philip Grubauer bought out by Seattle. You can see that right there. Now that's the offseason. Dallas bought out Tyler Seguin. Woo. So now we sim to the draft. The draft is pretty simple. Expiring staff contract. So Ray Bennett would need a new contract. Nothing too crazy here. You go to coaches. You click on the guy, Ray Bennett. It's expiring. Contract extension. You offer him whatever you want to offer him, and you go from there. Nothing too crazy or difficult. Simming to the draft itself now. So at the draft, your scouting has already been done, so I already know a very good deal of most of these players. I definitely don't know everything, but for James Hagens, for example, I know enough to think that he's the number 1 guy. His potential, I don't know it, but it looks like he's blue. It looks like the majority of the attributes have been uncovered. And I can make myself a little bit of a game plan here. I pick at 64, 114, 125. I can create a game plan for myself before clicking start draft. Once a draft is started, if it's set to the full longest time, I have the 3 minutes on the clock will be the 3 minutes. If I click sim pick, then it does exactly that. James Hagens goes first. Then sim again, sim again. So eventually I'll say sim to user pick. There you go. Thank you. Now, Vieilleux, for example, here that I'm at 64, this guy jumped 38 spots. This guy lead jumped 76 spots. I don't know much about their potential. Scouting like just that one player individually multiple times, of course, would have uncovered more. The auto scouting will tell you a good amount about all of the prospects. If I really want to focus on a few guys in that 60 to 65 range, I could have done that too. That was up to me. So I didn't do that, and I don't know a ton about these guys, but Vieilleux sounds like the guy to me. So I'll draft him. Philippe Vieilleux, bienvenue à l'équipe, mon ami. I can click on him right away, and it tells me, he is the yellow top 6 potential, meaning it's medium potential, a 65% chance at growing into that top 6 role. Great. Now, another thing you could look at, which doesn't seem to be here right now, potential overall, that you don't want to put too much stock into. Like even for James Hagens, for example, at number 1 overall, his potential overall might have said like 84 or 86. I'm not exactly sure of where that number comes from, because with his blue franchise or whatever high elite potential, he's going to grow to 90 plus. So I don't put too much stock into potential overall. If you're picking at 180 and there's 2 players and one's potential overall 80 and one is potential overall 50, then sure, go for the guy who's 80. But when it comes down to the top guys and one's 86 and one's 87, go for the guy who's ranked higher and has 86. Not for the guy who's ranked 5 spots lower and is 87. I wouldn't put too much. I would put more stock in potential than potential overall, is what I'm trying to say. So you sim your picks, you sim to your pick, all that stuff, sim the entire draft, do whatever you feel like. You get to the end and then you can exit. Thank you. Of course, you could have traded during that in the top left corner. You can click on those different screens as well. After the draft, you can sim to contract extensions. Today marks the commencement of contract extension period, providing an opportunity to secure the core of your team for the future, blah, blah, blah. Thank you. I can see who's expiring and what do they want. So Rantanen is an expiring UFA who wants 8 by 9.065 with a no movement clause. So as we already spoke about in contracts before, I can do those right now. I already showed you contract extensions, so I won't show you more here, but we will jump ahead to the free agency. So as I can see who's expiring, who's signed on long term, and what are the different UFA, RFA colors. blah, blah, blah. So let's say I don't want to sign any of those guys and I simulate up until free agency on July 1st. Let's see how the free agency pool looks at that time. So all these unsigned guys go to free agency. Sorry. If I go to contract, no, that's just giving me a final warning. Thank you for the warning, but I did not want it. I want to make the bad decision. Thank you. So I'll sim to July 1st. Now I can go to free agency. So in free agency, of course, Rantanen's the big fish out there. Now, before the free agency minigame starts, you got to do your research, because once the clock starts, they will be fielding offers from other teams and potentially signing them as they deliberate. So first I'll browse free agents. I know that in my depth chart I look, okay, I lost Mikko Rantanen, I need a new right winger. So I'll go back, I'll look at right wingers, and I'll see, okay, let's say I want Claude Giroux here. They're waiting for offers right now. Their decision is they're waiting for offers. I can't send him anything yet, I have to wait to start the event first. So once the event has started, then I can send him an offer. I go back to offers, start the event. Here we go. So 30 seconds, the decisions are made in going in different phases every 30 seconds. So if I go to Claude Giroux and I give him an offer, he will be considering it, but not necessarily make a decision within that period. So let's say I don't send anyone an offer in round 1. There's 10 rounds in this mini game. So each round is 30 seconds. In round 1, I don't send anybody an offer. Everybody is waiting for offers. In round 2, we'll see how that changes. So here we go. Decisions are coming in. Round 2. Mikko Rantanen has received enough that he is deliberating. He's received 7 offers. If they are deliberating, then at the end of that 30-second period, they are guaranteed making a decision. Not guaranteed signing with a specific team, but they are guaranteed making a decision. So if you want to sign a player and you haven't sent an offer yet and you see the player is deliberating, you need to send an offer ASAP because they're about to make a decision. So Mikko Rantanen will make a decision in 5 seconds. Will it be for me? I don't really know, but I know it'll be for somebody. So he accepted with me. Great. So he signed with me 7 by 9.8 in the end. Now I see Claude Giroux. He's deliberating. He's also going to make a decision. He has 9 offers pending, and in 20 seconds, he's going to one of those teams. And now he's gone. It won't necessarily tell you where he went. Sometimes it'll be at the top. So Claude Giroux, 1 year, 4.498 with the Canadians. So sometimes it will roll at the top as news goes by, but it won't always come up necessarily. So Granlund, Nelson, they're about to make decisions. So within those 10 rounds and 3 minutes, all the decisions from the major players, I would say. There'll still be players left over, but those major players will have made their decisions by the end of the 10 rounds of the free agent minigame. I can sim to next round. Let's say I go all the way to the end of the round of all 10 rounds. Who's still going to be out here? Definitely good players, but the big fish are gone. So here we are in round 10, down to the best player being 84 overalls. Sim to the end, the free agent minigame is over, and now still on July 1st, still free agency, but all of those big guys are gone. The RFAs will still be there for sure, but the UFAs, the best are some 84 overalls. The big names have been signed. So I like that. Adds a little bit of pressure, adds some realism that a lot of other teams will be fighting at the same time for the same player. I like that. So that is free agency. You make decisions, you add clauses. We already spoke about contracts and whatnot. And I believe the last thing, can you believe it, would be to go to the Hall of Fame induction on August 1st of every year. So you can go ahead and sim towards that date. And here's where you will now vote on the next class for the Hockey Hall of Fame. So if I go to Hall of Fame, you'll see that the class of 2024 was Datsuk, Roenick, and Weber, and these are all the members who are already there, as we saw previously. If I start my Hall of Fame nomination, the game will tell me all these players who are potentially out there. Who do I want to nominate to the Hall of Fame? So before I'm even voting on who makes it, I'm just saying who should be nominated. So let's give it to Jumbo Joe. So Joe Thornton, I will nominate him to the Hall of Fame. Can I also nominate? Yeah, I'll also nominate Patrice Bergeron. No, I can also only nominate one. My apologies. So I nominate one, then I confirm my nomination. That then brings me to the selection of who's going to actually make it to the Hall of Fame now. So I can select 4 players. Let's say it's Thornton, Bergeron, Marleau, and Cujo. Those are my 4 picks. The other 31 teams are also making their picks. So let's say those are the obvious ones. Let's say I took off Jumbo Joe. He's the obvious one. And let's say I took off Jumbo and I gave my vote to Pat Verbeek. I don't vote for Joe Thornton. Confirm my votes, but in the end, the inductees are Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, and Patrice Bergeron. You know what? I probably shouldn't have done Joe Thornton because I think my nomination counted as a vote. So all 3 of these guys got 32 votes, 100%, and they are into the Hall of Fame. So Thornton, Marleau, and Bergeron are now the 2025 nominees, class of 2025. They make it to the Hall, and we do it over again in 2026. As the years go on, more players will become available, but at the start, those are the ones that you have available to you. So obvious choices, I think. Boy, so that's August 1st. After doing that, you can sim to next season. As the calendar crosses over from 2024-25 to 2025-26, it'll give you the final wrap up, who won the different leagues, NHL, AHL, QMJHL, etc. You can scroll through all your active leagues. You can see the leaders for all the top 10 at least for points. And then you can scroll through whatever other attributes you checked off at the beginning. Press continue, and now that turns over the calendar to September 1st of 2025, and you do it all over again, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope that this shone a light on what HLM is. Honestly, before I really took a deep dive, I always thought, I don't know, it's on my computer. I don't know if I like it with the controller or the franchise mode. I'm just more of a franchise mode guy. No, I have seen the light, and while I still love EA NHL franchise, I see how this is superior in so many ways and has the potential to keep getting better and better every year. Like HLM from a few years ago, it was not as good as HLM 25 today. It was still a great game, but it continues to get better every year as the developer actually listens to the voices of the people who are playing and adds the things that people are asking for the most. There's no random silence. There's no why does this not work. There's no that this is broken and now my game is no longer playable. These things get responded to, they get fixed, and that makes me even more willing to play. So I look forward to getting into this even here on the YouTube channel. Let me know in the comments, what do you want to see next from HLM? Do you want to see some sort of series, Battle Royale series, historic 1917 series? What do you want to see of HLM for a series here on the channel? Do you want it to be recorded? Do you want it to be live? What do you want to see of Hockey Legacy Manager here on the YouTube channel? And speaking of the channel, please do leave a like if you enjoyed the video. This was a ton of research and very long recording to get this done. I'm happy to do it, but a like for the efforts would be very much appreciated. And of course, subscribe if you haven't already to be made aware of all of our uploads here on the channel. Hit that bell to be notified, of course, when we go live as well for our live franchise mode series, our career simulations, and much more here on the channel, as we've just surpassed 8,500 subscribers and we're ready for much more to come in the year of 2025. As I mentioned, please also leave any thoughts in the comments on things that I may have missed or tips that you have that I didn't exactly cover. That'll be great for guides in the future. And if you want to talk more about franchise mode, HLM, hockey, any of those discussions in general, feel free to join us in our Discord server linked in the description with over 700 members. We'd love to have you join us. And we even have a separate server for our own connected franchise HLM league, kind of like a GM connected. So if you want to join that, take over a team and even kind of play the game without having to own the game, that would be a great way to kind of dip your toe in the water as well if you're trying to still figure out, do I want to make this purchase? Again, that purchase is not necessary to play the game, but I do think that it's worth it. So I'll close it off there after like whatever the 6 hours of this video has been. Thank you so very much for watching. Much love to you all. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What are your thoughts on HLM? What are its best parts? And which elements do the EA NHL series need to take the most and put into NHL 26 and beyond? Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one.